Chapter 194. Until the very end, it isn't considered over and you don't know the final outcome. You are the same as your master, even if you know you will lose. Even if you pester them, you still want to fight them. Within the pond, there was a burst of laughter. However, it was still a white chess piece that was placed on the chessboard. The voice turned lazy. However, what was the final outcome? He was surrounded and killed by the Confucian saints and many Buddhist and Taoist faction experts. Even after he died, he wasn't able to rest in peace. His body was split into dozens of pieces and suppressed in the 5 continents and 12 islands. What a tragic outcome. A person who was about to step onto the peak of the worlds, who should have been undying and indestructible, ended up in such a state. It really makes one speechless. Your words aren't right. That teen shook his head. His expression was really serious. Master is different from me. He knew that he would definitely win, which was why he kept on fighting with the heavens, the earth, and people. That was because he knew that our Tsang Shengdao people's ideals of equality would spread to the world one day. It might not be in his generation. It might not be in my generation or the next, but there will definitely be a day when his wish is fulfilled. That female voice laughed coldly. Instantly, the entire pond froze up. You make it sound so easy, but your aura is really solemn and tragic. However, do you think that the Confucian school of thought people are made of mud and will be broken by you? Those Confucian saints were all born from the righteous energy of heaven and earth, holding onto the luck of heaven and earth. Since they're scolding your Tsang Shengdao for being evil, then they naturally have their reasons. I feel that all of you are in a precarious situation right now. I don't see any chance to rise up. TSK. Senior is wrong again. My master is one of the Confucian saints. Even before he died, his righteous energy was the top of all the saints. The white-robed teen specially adjusted the Confucian crown on his head, like he was reminding her that he was dressed like a Confucian scholar. Master once mentioned before, what is Confucianism? The word Confucianism refers to the needs of people. This is why the so-called Confucianism, simply put, is what people need. The current Confucian school of thought is suitable for the human path of the various worlds. Naturally, their luck is really thick. However, if one day the people of the world aren't willing to bother about their theories when the human path changes, then the so-called Confucian school of thought are just fake Confucians. Why can't they win? However, how do you know that there will be a day when the human path? I don't know. The white-robed young man lowered his head and muttered to himself. It seemed that he had finally made up his mind and made another move on the chessboard. Those fellows take the responsibility to fool the people. What can be made of the people can't know. The Confucian school of the Confucian school, of course, they have spent so much effort. They spread of Confucians Confucian, TTS, have. Since you don't know, how do you know you have a chance of winning? The voice in the pool that had already turned into ice was even colder. And no matter how much you try to confine them, no matter how much you try to fool them, what was the point? Those people go against the will. How can they not walk further and further away from the human path? The 10 over dynasties in the Central Cloud continent usually end in just a few hundred years. The Confucian school of thoughts would flourish once every few hundred years, a cycle of death every few hundred years, never changing. Who knows how many people on the 5 continents and 12 islands died because of this war? They won't repent. They're talking about these heaven path bugs. As he said that, the white-robed teen's expression seemed to be getting more and more furious. Our Confucian school of thought's 6 arts, rites, music, archery, driving, calligraphy, and divination. The ancient saints were either martial path experts or peak spirit masters. In the end, they changed it to the 6 scriptures. It caused the Confucians today to have no strength to fight a chicken, relying on righteousness to eat. Their lives and deaths are in the hands of the ruler, becoming dogs of the ruler. How can they rule? And that so-called doctrine of the mean? It's all bullshit. He ripped open his collar. The ancient saints, the so-called middle path, was the path of heaven and man merging into one. It focused on one's nature and one's body merging, cultivating the heart and character to reach the highest level of kindness, benevolence, sincerity, virtue, and holiness. However, they made it sound like it was neutral, a compromise between the two. What ruling a country is like cooking a small fish. How can this country be compared to a small fish? Even if one wanted to cook some small fish, it was okay to use some strength occasionally. Like them, even if their bodies were rotting and leaking pus, they didn't dare to use a knife to cut themselves. What was the point? In the past, when I did things, people who went slightly out of line were seen as cruel officials. They had to scold and scold them before they were willing to stop. Also, what do you mean that if the water is too clear, there won't be any fish? Then why should the water be clear? The Confucian school of thought ruled the world. Every 100 years, corruption would rise and chaos would appear. However, those Confucian school of thought were helpless. They even came to scold my master, saying that it was a heretical path. them. Within the pond, it was totally silent. Like they were totally stunned by the last sentence of the teen. The white-robed teen smiled. "We're playing chess. Why are you saying all this? It is rare for me to come over to accompany you. All these things have nothing to do with you." After a long while, the voice in the pool let out a soft snort and replied. When the white-robed teen saw that, he was startled. A moment later, he smiled. "As expected, if we don't continue to fight, how will we know whether we win or lose in the end? If I admitted defeat just now, how would I know that you would be so careless and reveal such a huge weakness? Even I, this stupid chess player, saw a chance to turn defeat into victory." Within the pond, it was totally silent. However, just as the teen was holding a black chess piece in his hand, his heart suddenly moved. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat as he casually waved his hand outwards. A few hundred miles away, a talisman flew over. The white-robed teen was startled as he summoned it into his hand. A moment later, his brows furrowed. He was both surprised and worried. "Is the person who sent the talisman your junior who got the Marshall St. Golden Pellet?" The voice within the pond seemed to have confirmed that this was the case. Not waiting for the teen to reply, she asked curiously, "What is it that caused your heart to shake so much?" The teen didn't reply, thinking about it for a long while before he clenched his hand. The talisman in his hand instantly turned to dust and scattered. He said with a tearful face, "It is Lingbo. She recently found a good seedling. 14 years old, sword path 1 with the spirit, Xiantian initial meridian, night wandering spirit master." Just that? The female voice didn't understand. To have such achievements at such a young age. In front of her, it was like he wasn't worth mentioning. Dual cultivator, to have such achievements at 14 years old, that can only be considered not bad. However, sword path 1 with the spirit. This kid is indeed the first since the sky was opened. However, it shouldn't be enough to alarm you, Song Xingdao. Let the current sect leader of Taiyuan sect come out and take him in as a direct disciple. After all, you aren't in the cloud world anymore. The white-robed teen sighed, feeling really helpless. However, what if this person was born with dual meridian body, barriers from heaven, and his soul is broken? Within the pond, there was a shocked exclamation, looking really shocked. On the surface of the water, a snow-white dragon head appeared. Although it was huge, its appearance was inexplicably adorable. It opened its eyes wide and looked at the chessboard in shock. In this world, there is actually such a person? To cultivate to such a realm and still not die? How weird. If he is a God Emperor candidate, his luck shouldn't be so bad. A few cultivation barriers gathered together. However, if one were to say that he wasn't, then this kind of talent was truly rare and unprecedented. It is enough for him to inherit your Song Xingdao's legacy. Haven't you been worrying about the legacy? This should be a happy matter. So why are you so troubled? All right, I remember that I owe you a favor. You and I have known each other for many years, as long as it is within my ability. This time, I can lend you a helping hand. That white-robed teen wasn't happy at all, shaking his head slightly. With such a disciple, I am naturally delighted. However, the Kinzo sect already knows about this person. Lingbo and Wujua Villa's Yinfan have been arguing for several months to no avail before reporting it to me. Do you think I don't have a headache? However, if you are willing to help me, this matter will be easily solved. Kinzo sect? You want to come into contact with that Kinzo sect head? Then forget it, I want to sleep. The jade dragon rolled its eyes, then decisively dove back into the water, bubbling with water. The white-robed teen scoffed, not caring much, shaking his head slightly. As expected, you are unreliable. It seems like I really have to make a trip back to the cloud world. Speaking of that place, I have left for 4,000 years. I really miss it. Following which he looked at the chessboard in front of him regretfully. However, I can't play this game. It is really rare for me to win against you. With your chess skills, even if I make a mistake, you aren't my match. At the end of this game, I should win by 6 points. The female voice scoffed, filled with disdain. Following which she shot a ball of white light towards the white-robed teen. Take this thing. Anyways, it is useless with me. Although your martial path and spiritual cultivation have entered the saint realm. Once you enter the cloud world, you will be suppressed. With this item here, it can help you a little. Anyways, be careful. Don't end up like your master, being ganged up on and killed by others. The white-robed teen smiled, not bothering to look at what the white light was, casually keeping it into his sleeves. His eyes were filled with gratitude as he nodded his head towards the pond, following which he didn't stop, stepping into the void. Just as the teen's body disappeared, that jade white dragon head popped out once more, its entire body pierced out of the water, only to see numerous red chains that were densely packed together, piercing through and binding the entire dragon body. At this moment, the dragon eyes were looking at the chessboard in shock. Weird. Why will my piece be placed here? Chapter 195. Xian Mountain City, within a quiet room. 2 candles flickered, seeming to feel the cold and solemn aura of this place. The flames shrunk and were about to be extinguished. Lisina sat on a soft couch, her face dark and sunken, filled with coldness. Opposite her knelt a person. It was Li Yunyang. She was kneeling on the ground, her face ashen white. What is going on with my son-in-law? You still aren't willing to say? Following beside Miss, you can't not know anything. If you aren't willing to answer me today, then there is no need to speak. Li Yunyang bit her lips, threads of blood seeping out. After a short while, seeing the glow in Lisina's eyes become sharper and sharper, she hesitantly opened her mouth. Yunyang really doesn't know. I only know that someone placed restrictions in my body. He also warned me that if I dared to reveal anything about the Zhongsho prince, he would wipe out my 3 families. Even the spiritual houses and sects had to be destroyed. I don't know whether or not it is true, but I guess that this person is at least above the ascended realm. Lisina was startled, revealing a deep thought, following which she laughed coldly. If that is the case, then I don't blame you. However, why did you instigate me to pretend to be sick? After returning to Xian Mountain City, you thought of all sorts of ways to prevent that Zhongsho from entering the city? Li Yunyang's expression seemed to relax as she sighed. Mistress, Yunyang did it for Mississippi. The prince's sword technique is one with the spirit, and he is a dual cultivator, which is rare in the world. However, the problems of the mysterious moon brilliance method can only be solved by the mysterious cloud spirit sect's mysterious chill ancient pill, which is why Yunyang. As she said that, Li Yunyang snuck glances at Lisina's expression. Seeing her expression slowly calm down, her tone also became more and more relaxed. But, to her surprise, before she could finish her words, Lisina suddenly waved her hand and heavily slapped her face. With a loud pa sound, Li Yunyang was sent flying several feet away. She covered her face as she looked at the couch in shock. His eyes were filled with bewilderment, as if he did not understand why his mistress would attack him for no reason. Do you really think that I, Lisina, am an ignorant woman? Lisina sneered coldly. The sharpness in her eyes seemed like it was about to materialize. For Irin's sake, I can't believe you can say such words. Only the mysterious chill ancient pill of the mysterious moon brilliance method could resolve the hidden danger of the mysterious moon brilliance method and save her life. You can only use that to coax others, but you're using it to deceive me. Lisina stood up and coldly stood in front of Li Yunyang. Even now, I'm still angry at my son-in-law. However, he also knew that with his ability and talent, if he wanted to join one of the sects, even those few grotto heaven vast habitats would treat it like a treasure. He was probably afraid that she would melt if he held her in his hands. A small mysterious cloud spirit sect. Han Nishui, what were they? In the future, once Zhongsho broke through to the Empyrean realm, if he wanted to, he could crush him with a single finger. Was there a need to worry about not being able to find a single ancient cold profound pill? Be it asking seniors to help or perfecting the cultivation method, or finding other herbs to refine pills, it would be really easy to protect Irin. Do you need to worry about my daughter's life? Li Yunyang's face couldn't help but turn ashen white, devoid of blood. She opened her mouth to speak, but she didn't know how to explain. Lisina seemed to have calmed down, asking expressionlessly, I heard that you had an unclear relationship with a disciple of the mysterious cloud spirit sect? Irin marrying into the mysterious cloud spirit sect seemed to be beneficial to you? Oh right, that person seemed to be called Long something, what an old-fashioned name. However, this person seemed to have disappeared for a long time. Who knows? He might have died at the hands of my son-in-law. Li Yunyang's body instantly felt like it was struck by lightning. His entire person was startled, his eyes filled with disbelief and hatred. Lisina was too lazy to listen to her explanation, saying leisurely, the prince is a Fangzhong. When she said that, Lisina also felt that it didn't make sense. Like Zhongsho, he had nothing to do with the word Fangzhong. After a light cough, she continued, although he didn't mention you in front of Irin and my husband, he didn't say anything bad about you. However, I can imagine the way you, Li Yunyang, do things. Since Irin wants to marry him, no matter how much I don't like that fellow, I have to help him and Irin clear out some trash. Your family has served me for 10 years, and I am not someone who doesn't care about old relationships. I won't kill you. Have you heard of the Yellow Fountain prison? I will send you there, and 20 years later, I will get people to bring you back. Li Yunyang's eyes were originally unfocused, but when she heard the words Yellow Fountain prison, she couldn't help but show a strong fear. She sat up and was about to beg for mercy when a few chains flew in from outside the room, directly wrapping around her limbs and dragging her out of the room. Just as the room was totally silent, the curtains at the side were pulled open. Xinyuan Tong walked out while deep in thought. Husband, do you think what Li Yunyang said is true? Lisina's eyes were filled with doubt. Does Zhongsho really have an ascended grandmaster by his side? I took a closer look at her just now, but I didn't notice anything wrong with her. It should be true. Xinyuan Tong stood with his hands behind his back, taking in a deep breath. 2 days ago, 2,000 miles away from Xian Mountain City, Fang Shu's tracks were for no reason. He just disappeared without a trace. There wasn't even any sound. Lisina was astonished, following which her brows rose up. But how did you know? Naturally, I sent some people to kill him, but in the end, they didn't see him. My men searched thousands of miles of land and still couldn't find him. We also didn't see him rush back to Pill Fountain Sect to report. Seeing Lisina's brows furrow, revealing a disapproving expression, Xinyuan Tong couldn't help but laugh. I'm just joking. I'm just planning to lock him up for a period of time and let him go after everything settles down. However, if he really makes me anxious, even if he is from the same sect as Irin, I will kill him. The sect you came from is one of the large sects in the world, so you should know how much this spirit and martial arts merging into one is worth. The last few sentences were full of a cold and murderous aura. Lisina was startled. Spirit and martial arts merging into one. I only know that during the Cloud Desolate era, the most outstanding ancient experts were all dual cultivators. People who could merge martial arts and spiritual cultivation into one. However, I heard that most of them were after the celestial realm. I really haven't heard of someone like Zhongsho. Who knows if this matter is a blessing or a curse to him? The sects fighting over him might not be a blessing. Weiron's kid is naturally talented. He is my son-in-law, so naturally I have to protect him. Xinyuan Tong smiled slightly, Following which Lysina asked curiously, I'm only curious about the mysterious ascended realm that Li Yunyang mentioned. If he really likes Zhongsho, why didn't he take him in? Zhongsho wants to return to Gantian Mountain to take over as the Monster King, so he will have to kill along the way. There will be a time when people find out about his ability. A few days ago, when they charged into the city, did Zhongsho really attack in front of everyone? How would he be able to hide it? He didn't take him in because he was afraid of breaking the vases or because he had other worries. As for the situation a few days ago, it was because Zhongsho, that kid, didn't attack in front of everyone. How do you know that they didn't have a way to hide it after the matter? Xinyuan Tong shook his head. If it was me, I wouldn't be willing to let so many people know about his sword path being one with the spirit dual cultivator talent. Wouldn't that increase the number of competitors to snatch disciples? If it was a righteous sect, it would be okay, as they would have some worries. If it was a demon sect, even if they killed millions of people in Xian Mountain City, they wouldn't care. This is just a small matter, and there is no need to care about it. As he said that, Xinyuan Tong's cold and sharp expression became thicker and thicker. What I am most worried about is Yunxiao Mountain and Blazing Flame Mountain. Tantao, that bastard, was too presumptuous. He actually did such a thing. It was really a headache. These few years I was heavily injured and couldn't manage things. Did you all really think that I was dead? As he said that, Lysina was also ashamed and awkward. Although she didn't agree to Tantao's suggestion that day, she didn't stop him either. Thinking back to those two monster race powers, she felt that it was a little problematic. There was also that West Ocean Italian city. Gantia Mountain Zhongshu and Zhongyang wouldn't sit still and do nothing. It was okay if Zhongsho didn't go to Gantia Mountain, but if he really rushed over, he would be like a rabbit walking into a tiger's den. Of course, at this moment no one knew. This seemingly harmless rabbit not only knew how to bite people, but it was also a ferocious beast that hid its strength. However, no matter how strong Zhongsho was, he was only a knight wandering realm spirit master. Compared to these two giants, he was still a kid who hadn't grown up and had no way to go up against them. In the past, she didn't care, but now she couldn't help but feel worried. Since there is an ascended ancestor beside that kid, he should be fine. However, we can't place his safety on outsiders. Zhongsho needs some trustworthy subordinates in Gantian Mountain. Xinyuan Tong's brows furrowed tightly. I am prepared to lend him half of my mysterious armor wind dragon cavalry to protect him to Gantian Mountain. As for that day, although Zhongsho didn't mention it, I have to give him an explanation. You are the mastermind behind this matter, and it hasn't caused any bad consequences. You are my wife, and I can't punish you. However, you need to be grounded for 3 years and not allowed to go out. When my little brother breaks free, I will bring you along to ask for forgiveness. Although Luo Xian is loyal, he is rash and offends his superiors. He will be whipped 100 times by the Lord. He will also be grounded for 3 years so that he can cultivate his body and mind. As for Tantao, as he said that, Xinyuan Tong suddenly stopped and was in deep thought. A moment later, he opened his mouth seriously, removed from his position as Wind Feather Army Marshal, and whipped 200 times. If he doesn't die, he will follow Zhongsho to Gantian Mountain. My son-in-law just so happens to lack wings. On the side of Lysina, when she heard the mysterious armor wind dragon cavalry, she was shocked. This was the strongest and most elite cavalry army in Xian Mountain City. Less than 2,000 of them, but they had the battle record of trampling 100,000 elite troops. Even Tantao, who was seen as one of the brains, was given his own show just like that. When she heard the last few sentences, she felt wronged, but didn't dare to retort. Then she calmed down. I accept the punishment. I just want to ask you, are you really going to go all out to get involved in this storm? Xinyuan Tong instantly laughed out loud, his eyes filled with decisiveness. That in Dragon Canyon matter, there were people who wanted to work with me. However, I was worried about Zhongsho's safety, which was why I didn't agree. However, now I don't have any worries. Weirin has done us a huge favor. Even if I die without a burial place, I can't sit still and watch the Gantian Mountain he built up fall into the hands of others. Chapter 196. Just as Xin Yuan Tong was worried about Yunxia and Blazing Flame Mountain, on a desolate yellow path far from Xian Mountain City, there were two groups of people dressed differently facing each other. There weren't many of them, only around 100, but they all looked really strong and majestic. All of them were riding the rare Wind Rider foals. The iron armor on their bodies were all really exquisite and had talismans carved on it. The people on both sides more or less had beast characteristics. In the middle of the path, there were two people sitting opposite each other. One of them was really muscular like a giant bear. His face was covered in a beard and his eyes were really fierce. The other was medium-sized, but he looked really strong. He was slim and thin. The muscles on his body were just average. He sat there lazily, giving one a feeling that he was really dangerous. His well-proportioned four limbs seemed to contain explosive strength. That prince wants to return to Gantian Mountain. He doesn't dare to leave our Yunxia Mountain territory. He also can't leave your Blazing Flame Mountain's land. A full 400 torches were nailed to the side, seeing that this place was as bright as day. That thin male lowered his head, holding a tree branch and drawing on the ground. In the blink of an eye, a map of Donglin Cloud Continent appeared on the paper. Then, he held the tree branch in his hand and lightly knocked on a long and narrow mountain range that pretty much covered half of the southwest cloud path. As for outside of the cloud ocean, with the West Ocean Taiyan City locking it down, he also can't go. There was only one path that could be taken, no matter how he thought about it. Ruahai Mountain Range. The burly man squinted his eyes slightly and smiled. This place is really difficult to deal with. There are at least 4 ways in and out of this place. They're also really far away. The nearest one is 1,000 miles away, and there are also tens of thousands of feet tall mountains. Even if they're all cavalry with cloud stepping foals, they would need 3 days to move. To block him isn't an easy matter. If it was just a few people around him, it would be easy. Even my Blazing Flame Mountain can find a few Xuanwu ancestors to help. However, if Xin Yuan Tong wants to go all out to help him, then we have to send a huge army to block him. However, this region is coincidentally between Gantian Mountain and Xian Mountain City. If we send too few people, we might all die. If we send too many, it will shake the foundations of both our families. Even the crown prince would not dare to come. Is there a need to mobilize so many people? It's not because of Zhongshu. It was just cutting off the connection between Xian Mountain City and Gantian Mountain, breaking their wings. It was even better that Xin Yuan Tong was willing to send a large army for him. He would have a decisive battle in the Ruahai Mountain Range. If they couldn't, they could build a city here. You and I will each take 2. Within this Ruahai Mountain Range, the 25 Mindstone veins that belong to Gantian Mountain and Xian Mountain will all fall into our hands. Didn't Prince Xiong Kuei come for that? In the past, the 3 of them were looking forward to Zhongshu's return. However, today this kid had obtained the support of Xin Yuan Tong. That Iron Tiger's attitude was also unfathomable. Be it Zhongshu or Zhongyang, they would definitely feel uneasy. If it was in the past, as long as Gantian Mountain casually sends out an army, we would have no chance at all. Only now do we have a chance. The skinny man snorted coldly. Don't try to sound me out like this. Most of the bear clans are honest and straightforward, but your Flame Bear clan is as cunning as a fox. Be straightforward. I won't take advantage of you. However, this Ruahai Mountain Range is a little far from my Yunxia Mountain. At most, we can send 450,000 elites and 7 Xuanwu ancestors. How about your Blazing Flame Mountain 600,000? For exits have 200,000 and above troops, enough to fight with Xian Mountain City. That's for the best. That Xiong Kuei didn't reject, nodding his head in agreement. However, his eyes revealed a probing expression. However, Brother Feng, is your Yunxia Mountain really prepared to kill that Gantian Mountain prince? The thin male's brows furrowed, scoffing coldly. Why? What does killing this Zhongshu benefit me? It will only benefit those 3 people. To be able to capture him alive and have one more trump card in our hands is the best. If we really can't, then killing him is okay. For this matter, both our families will rely on our own ability. Xiong Kuei laughed out loud. following which he took a tree branch and pointed at the map. Then this matter is settled. However, before the army gathers, I want to take a look at this place. I wonder if Brother Feng would be interested in making a trip with me? This place is Jiefu City. Feng Yu's brows instantly furrowed as he looked towards where Xiong Kuei's eyes were pointing at, his eyes filled with deep thought. It is. Xiong Kuei nodded slightly. To enter Roi Mountain Range from the east, no matter which path it is, we have to pass through this city. This place is the third biggest cultivator market in Donglin Cloud Continent. I heard that recently Pill Fountain Sect and Kongchi Sect both have a batch of spiritual artifacts and pills to sell here. It is really bustling. I guess that Gantian Mountain Prince will most probably go take a look. No matter what, I have to join in the fun. I also want to see what ability that prince has. Let Xinyuan Tong nod his head and really marry his daughter to that trash. Feng Yu thought about it for a moment before nodding his head slightly. Their Yunxiao Mountain also needed to buy some high-grade spiritual treasures, so it was good to go take a look. Xinyuan Irin's pill refining speed was really quick, refining day and night. The few grade 2 and grade 3 pills that Zhongsho needed were refined in just a short few days. Zhongsho went to visit her every day, morning, afternoon, and night without stopping. He personally saw his kind and righteous little girl slowly become tired and haggard. He couldn't help but feel heart-pained. He wanted to help, but every day he was chased out of the pill room by Irin because she found him an eyesore. Zhongsho was helpless and could only vent all his rage on Zhongyuan. He also trained him from morning to night without stopping. There were 24 hours in a day, and Zhongyuan could only rest for an hour. Seeing that, Hu Zhongyuan's head felt numb. Every day, he would avoid him from afar. When he looked at Zhongsho, he would instinctively hide in a corner. He was afraid that this prince, who obviously had sadistic tendencies, would think of him and viciously train him. However, when 5 to 6 days passed, Hu Zhongyuan felt envious. Zhongyuan's days were a little tough. However, his improvement speed was terrifying. Since he broke through to the martial ancestor realm, it was like a flood bursting out of a dam, unstoppable. Using the power of pills, in just 10 days he was able to cultivate his 4th Earth Meridian. In just half a month, he would be able to merge with another spiritual meridian and truly enter the 4th Meridian realm. On the contrary, he was stuck at a standstill during these days. He had touched the barrier to advancing to Xuanwu Ancestor, but he couldn't find a way to break through. Looking at the situation, without 4 to 5 years of settling down, he wouldn't be able to improve further. Envious of Zhongyuan's improvement, Hu Zhongyuan instantly changed his strategy. From morning till night, he would be in front of Zhongsho. He would also shake his head and wave his hands. He was just short of telling Zhongsho that he was here and that he should pay attention to him. "Come on, Your Highness, come and torture me." Zhongsho didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't have time to bother about this fellow, so he could only casually point out some flaws in Hu Zhongyuan's knife attacks and follow his promise from before. He personally taught him a set of knife techniques from the tiger race that he remembered, which surprised Hu Zhongyuan. However, while he was delighted, Hu Zhongyuan felt unhappy. He thought that, as expected, looks were more popular. This Zhongyuan had white skin and a handsome face. Could it be that she had an affair with the crown prince? If not, why did the prince like to torture him and not find him? Tens of days later, the last cooling snow quail pill on Zhongsho's pill recipe was finally out. The current Xinyuan Irin was totally exhausted, making Zhongshoxin feel guilty apart from the pain. In the last 2 days in Xian Mountain City, he didn't leave her side at all, accompanying her. On the 15th day since they arrived in Xian Mountain City, Zhongsho thought about his agreement with Hu Zhongyuan. There were only 20 days left. Just now, she had reluctantly started to leave. The bunch of them were accompanied out of the city by Xinyuan Irin. However, just as they walked out of the city gates, they saw a black mass of cavalry lined up neatly by the side of the road. They were all dressed in black talisman armor, along with a 4-foot-long knife, a steel spear, and a red bow. The mounts below were also really weird. Some looked like lizards, but they were different. Not only were their bodies beautiful, Their forelegs were slightly long, their outer appearance was pale green, and there were two wings that seemed to have degenerated. They could also float in the air, stepping on the air a foot above the ground. This is the wind-winged dragon beast, Xian Mountain City's mysterious armor-winged dragon cavalry. Zhongsho's pupils constricted. The wind-winged dragon beast was also a grade 3 beast. Its speed was a little faster than the cloud's stepping foals, but it was a little weaker than the wind rider foals. However, the leather armor on the beast was tough to be broken by blades, and it was really strong, more suitable for battle formations. Their speed was a little slower, but their numbers were numerous times more than the wind rider foals. The mysterious armor-winged dragon cavalry of Xian Mountain City was an elite cavalry army that was famous throughout Donglin Cloud Continent. In terms of ranking, they were even above the Yunxia City Fire Wolf Cavalry. The only ones that could suppress them were his father Zhong Weiron's personal black fox iron cavalry. It was said that the cavalry within were all people who cultivated both spirit and martial arts. There were only 1,000 of them, but they were invincible. Even those hidden sects had to fear their sharpness. However, after Zhong Weiron hid into the Oblivion Cloud Ocean, this black fox iron cavalry disappeared without a trace. During the time he was in the east of Donglin Cloud Continent, especially after he left Pill Spirit Mountain, the reason why those powers only sent small fries over to probe was because they were worried about this personal army of the Monster King. Casually looking at these cavalry, he saw that there were tens of Xiantian masters. There were also 10 martial ancestors, each leading 10 groups of 100 people. Although they were all strong, they weren't arrogant at all. They stood solemnly at the side of the path, as silent as a forest, without any signs of movement at all. However, there was a strong aura, suppressing one such that one couldn't breathe. Probably with just 1,000 cavalry, they would be able to trample over Cloud Saint City and Lianhai City. He was startled for a moment before he understood Xianyuan Tong's intentions. While he was grateful in his heart, he scolded out. He was originally planning to spend some time with Yiren before he left. However, looking at the situation now, it was all gone. Riding the horse in front of the cavalry, he saw Xianyuan Tong smile. Your mother-in-law still doesn't want to see you. She is really arrogant and has always been like that. She can't bring her face down, so don't blame her. Zhongsho nodded his head and bowed, not showing any expression. Xianyuan Tong looked behind him. This is the personal army that I spent tens of years to train. From now on, I'll leave it to you. These people have followed me for more than 10 years. You can be at ease. Chapter 197. Zhongsho nodded his head silently. 1,000 mysterious armor-wind dragon cavalry. That was a huge amount. He wasn't willing to open his mouth to thank him, only remembering the gratitude in his heart. Naturally, in this world, there isn't absolute loyalty. So, Prince, don't disappoint him. As he said that, Xianyuan Tong waved his hand. Out of the cavalry, the person at the front rode the most majestic wind-winged dragon beast to the side of Xianyuan Tong. When he opened his helmet, it was Tan Tao, nodding his head towards Zhongsho. Zhonghu and Zhongsho beside you are top people in the martial cultivation world who can take on 10. However, if they face Xuanwu ancestors, they will still be at a disadvantage. As for Ruoshui, although he personally taught her and treated her like a disciple, her poison injuries haven't healed. I'll let Tan Tao follow you. He was the one who caused the Yunxia and Blazing Flame Mount Matters. This time, let him make up for it. As Xianyuan Tong said that, he seemed to still be angry, viciously staring at Tan Tao. The latter could only smile awkwardly, following which his expression turned solemn. Don't worry, City Lord. On this trip to Gantian Mountain, I won't let the prince die in front of me. Only then did Xianyuan Tong smile in satisfaction. Zhongsho felt his head hurt. Why was it this scheming fellow? He would rather Xianyuan Tong send Luo Xian to his side. However, at this moment, he couldn't reject and could only helplessly say, Thank you, father-in-law, these 1,000 mysterious armor-wind dragon cavalry. In just 3 months, Zhongsho, will let them return in one piece. No need. You're the young city lord of Xian Mountain City. These mysterious armor wind dragon cavalry should be yours in the future. You can use them as you wish. Naturally, this bunch of people will be taken care of by you. Zhongshu's mouth was agape. Xinyuan Tong laughed. I know that when your father hid in the Oblivion Cloud Ocean, he left large amounts of beast crystals and mind stones for you in the Somlu Bank. You can afford such a small number of people, right? Zhongshu was speechless. What did he mean by such a small number of people? 10 martial ancestors, 50 Xiantian masters, and 200 mythic masters. The others were all above the 5 meridians of the earth chakra level. There was also 1 man and 3 horses, making a total of 3,000 wind-winged dragon beasts. This person ate the horse's food and was also provided with a salary. Without more than 400 grade 4 spirit stones, or 4,000 grade 4 beast crystals a year, it was impossible to supply them, amongst which the few martial ancestors took up half. Every year, the spiritual stones and pills provided to them took up around 2,000 grade 4 beast crystals. However, how many grade 4 beast crystals and mind stones did Gantia Mountain produce in a year? There were quite a few spirit stone mines, but most of them had to be divided among the hidden sections. He remembered that Gantian Mountain's annual income, all the money, taxes, mind stones, and beast crystals, as well as the tributes from the vassal cities, along with the pills and weapons he ran, as well as the various material transactions. When converted to grade 4 beast crystals, it was only around 30,000. Every year, he obtained quite a lot from hunting under the Cloud Ocean. It should be around 250,000 pieces. In other words, just applying these 1,000 mysterious armor wind dragon cavalry was around 180% of Gantia Mountain's annual income. Even if he went back and inherited the position of Monster King, this sum of money wasn't something he could use as he wished. Now, he could only hope that Zhong Weiran left him a huge fortune. Xinyuan Tong seemed to have seen through his thoughts, smiling slightly. Don't worry. Don't forget that Brother Weiran was already an ascended ancestor 6 years ago. Moreover, he was an ascended expert who could charge into the Cloud Ocean alone to hunt grade 7 beasts and monsters without any injuries. Just him alone could obtain 10 and above grade 7 beast crystals each year. These few years, he went to those famous dangerous lands every day to train his martial path. You can imagine how huge his wealth is now. The money he saved up these few years would be enough to buy my Xian Mountain City. Samuraim's eyes instantly constricted, his heart instantly at ease. Only in his heart, there were waves rising and falling. In this era, on the Cloud Continent, beasts that reached grade 4 and above were really rare. Even if there were, they would be in groups or living in extremely dangerous desolate lands. Most of them were like little Ji who had their own intelligence opened. It wasn't something a normal Xiantian master could hunt alone. This was why the price difference between grade 4 and grade 3 was close to 100 times. However, there weren't any above the Cloud Continent. Below the Cloud Continent, there were numerous demon abyss evil lands where numerous beasts and evil monsters lived. If one had enough strength, one could take a floating cloud ship down to hunt. However, this was basically risking one's life and was extremely dangerous. Even ascended ancestors and wandering spirit masters might not be able to keep their lives. It was said that many beasts that were chased out of the Cloud Continent during the Cloud Desolate era lived below. There were also numerous strong beasts that were infected by the demon energy. Even 10,000 years later, there would be cases of ascended ancestors or wandering spirit masters being surrounded and killed every year. This was why, apart from those hidden sects, only powers like Gantian Mountain had the ability to form fleets to hunt for beast crystals. This was also why numerous martial ancestors and Xiantian masters relied on Gantian Mountain and Xian Mountain City. Apart from half of the beast crystals they obtained from the demon abyss evil lands, they would hand over to the city lord. As for the other gains, including the fur materials, they could keep it for themselves. Gantian Mountain's tax each year wasn't much. A large portion of their wealth came from below the Cloud Ocean. As there were very few casualties each time they entered, they were able to dominate the west of Donglin Cloud Continent. However, he guessed that Zhong Weiran was really strong. But to be so strong to such an extent, it made one speechless. Going in and out of the Cloud Ocean alone to hunt Grade 7 beasts without being injured at all. Even a Grade 1 Grandmaster might not be able to do that. Based on what Xinyuan Tong said, Zhong Weiran hid it for a full 6 years. Which meant that during these 6 years, when he was killing beasts and monsters below, those sect experts didn't notice at all. Following which Zhong Shou started to calculate in his heart how much wealth Zhong Weiran left for him. One Grade 7 beast crystal was equivalent to 10,000 Grade 4 beast crystals. 10 a year, 6 years was 600,000 Grade 4 beast crystals. Wasn't that the same as 2 years of income of Gantian Mountain? Even Zhong Weiran himself needed to use a lot. Above the Ascended Realm, the pills and mind stones needed were all ocean amounts. However, the remaining number was probably so huge that it was beyond his imagination. Taking in a deep breath, Zhong Shou forced himself to calm down. His head was covered in cold sweat. That's right. He remembered that a few days later would be the first wave of beast crystal and mind stone prices falling. The drop this time wasn't small. He actually forgot about it. In the past, he thought that the amount of mind stones and beast crystals he had in Sanlu Bank wasn't too large, and he didn't care much about it. He was confident that even if he lost it, he could earn it back quickly. At this moment, he felt heartache. All of a sudden, he recalled that there seemed to be a floating ruined city near the eastern entrance of the Rawheim mountain range. It was a famous cultivator market. Numerous cultivators and spirit masters, as well as various powers, even hidden sects, all traded there. That Sanlu Bank definitely had a branch within, and it was along the way. Xinyuan Tong Zhong Shou's face was alternating between green and white, his expression fluctuating as he found it weird. Following which he thought that Zhong Shou was shocked by the huge wealth, breaking out into a laugh. As for how much money Weiran left behind, I don't know. However, thinking about it, it shouldn't be little. It should be enough for my 1,000 mysterious armor wind dragon cavalry for 3 to 5 years. Don't worry. All right, Zhong Shou, do you know about spirit and martial arts merging into one? This question came out of nowhere. Tan Tao and Hu Qianqiu's pupils constricted. Then, they returned to normal. Spirit and martial arts merging into one. Zhong Shou's brows rose up slightly. This was a term that was seen as extremely high in both the spirit and martial paths. How would he not know about it? Only he felt a little weird. Why did Xinyuan Tong ask about this for no reason? I heard about it before. However, it seems like only those above the celestial realm in both the spirit and martial paths can do it. Although there are some people below the celestial realm who can do it, there are very few of them. It was said that after the Cloud Desolate era, there were only 7 people. Out of these 7 people, the most famous one was the Kinzo sect leader, as well as Tsang Xingdao's current, revered one. Moreover, all of them stepped into the celestial sect in a short time and left the cloud world. They were all ridiculously strong people. Spirit masters and martial cultivators could be split into heaven, earth, and body levels. After the spiritual Grand Master and true image Spirit Master, it wasn't the end. As expected, it was only done unconsciously after being drunk, Xinyuan Tong muttered, his face filled with regret. Only when Zhong Shou looked over with a weird expression did he smile. You are also a dual cultivator. Have you never thought about merging the spirit and martial paths into one? When Zhong Shou heard that, he decisively shook his head. Why haven't I thought about it? However, I heard that spirit and martial arts merging into one relies on comprehension, inspiration, and luck. If we force it, we won't be able to. Xinyuan Tong nodded his head slightly and didn't think too much about it. He clapped his hands and saw a cloud-crossing carriage drive out from behind cavalry. Zhong Shou felt weird, taking a look within only to see that it was filled with jars of wine. He couldn't help but feel weird. Xinyuan Tong should know that he couldn't drink wine? He only heard Xinyuan Tong explain, "This is the wine vault that I have accumulated over these tens of years." Today I will give it all to you. In the future, every time you train, it is best if you can drink a bottle. It is beneficial for you. If you meet a strong enemy, it is best if you can drink until you are half drunk. Zhong Shou was instantly speechless. Drinking wine was beneficial for him to train in martial arts. Why didn't he know? In terms of martial arts experience, this father-in-law of his couldn't even compare to him. However, he still reluctantly accepted it. Just as Zhong Shou was about to turn around and walk back to the cloud-crossing carriage, he pretended to ask, "Oh right, recently I heard Zhong Yuan mention that these 2 years the beast crystals hunted by Gantian Mountain has doubled. The beast crystals circulating on the market are much more than last year. Is it the same for father-in-law?" If that is the case, I am planning to make a trip to Jiafu City to change all the beast crystals that father left. I don't know why, but I'm a little worried. Xin Yuan Tong didn't care at first, but when he heard the last few words, his pupils constricted. Chapter 198. When they left Xian Mountain City, the people following Zhong Shou were 1,000 times stronger. Not only did they have 1,000 more mysterious armor wind dragon cavalry, but they also had 50 more carriages, 45 of which were the rations of the cavalry, as well as bows and arrows, spare weapons and armor, as well as some personal items. They were pulled by the wind-winged dragon beasts and were really quick. Naturally, their decorations and comfort level were far from Zhong Shou's carriage. They were the simplest transport carriages. The cost was 10 times more. There were 5 which were Zhong Shou's. There was only 1 carriage of wine. The other 4 were books. Xian Mountain City also had its own book collection, most of which were martial arts and spells, some of which disappeared in the future. Zhong Shou treated them like they were treasures, especially inviting a few spirit masters to use spells to copy them and bring them away. Every time he was free after cultivating, he would take a look at one. They were basically some shallow martial arts and spells. However, he couldn't underestimate them. There were always some interesting parts which could enlighten Zhong Shou. Apart from that would be Xin Yuan Tong's own men, a full 3,000 mysterious armor cavalry, and close to 200 carriages. Although his father-in-law didn't have much ambition, he was a smart and decisive person. Zhong Shou just needed a slight reminder, and he didn't hesitate to take out a large half of the beast crystals in the Xian Mountain City storage for Zhong Shou to bring away. When they were 30 miles out of the city, Zhong Yuan whistled once more, shaking several miles. In just a moment, another group of cavalry swiftly arrived. They were all riding wind-winged dragon beasts and also brought 100 carriages. There were only 500 of them, all of them muscular, all Iron Tiger race people. Zhong Shou now knew the elite troops of Gantian Mountain like the back of his hand. He knew that they were the Iron Tiger halberd warriors of the Iron Tiger race. There were 3,000 of them. However, they weren't cavalry but heavy armored infantry. Usually they rode war horses and could gallop for thousands of miles. Once they formed up, wearing 3 layers of heavy armor and holding halberds, they were pretty much a steel wall with a shredder. 3,000 armored soldiers. Even Zhong Weiron's Black Fox Iron Cavalry didn't dare to charge at them. On the 100 carriages were countless talisman armors and MO sabers made of well-tempered steel. Once there was a battle, it could be equipped immediately. Seeing this bunch of Iron Tiger MO knife warriors, Tan Tao's face instantly turned green. These people hid here without making a sound. It seemed like Hu Qianxiu was most probably defending against Xian Mountain City. However, at this moment, it was not good for him to say anything. Together, the thousands of men and horses were actually majestic, galloping like thunder. Hurrying day and night, they arrived at Jiafu City after a day. This city had the word floating in its name, and it was indeed floating in the air. It was actually modified from the remains of a giant ship from the Cloud Desolate era. It had a radius of more than 200,000 feet and was floating in the air for about 3,000 feet. Zhong Shou had never been here before in the game, but he had seen the ruins of this city in real life. He glanced up and didn't care about it all. Chu Shui was rather surprised. She had never seen such a floating city before. The Cloud Ocean had the power of maglev, which was why ships only needed to carve a suitable spiritual formation to be able to float on it. However, this giant Zhou floating on the cloud continent needed to test the skills of those hidden sections. At this moment, what Zhongshu and Hu Zhongyuan care more about were the few troops gathered nearby. 2,000 Flame Bear Race, Maniac Bear, Armored Warriors. 2,000 Yunxia Mountain Tiger, Leopard Cavalry. Did the princes of Yunxia Mountain and Blazing Flame Mountain all come here? Hu Zhongyuan squinted his eyes, a cold glow flashing across his eyes, especially when his eyes swept across those Maniac Bear, Armored Warriors. His killing intent boiled. The Flame Bear Race people also looked over in rage. The Iron Tiger Race, Iron Tiger Halberd Warriors, and these Maniac Bear Armored Warriors were all infantry. During these 10 years, who knows how many times they had fought. Naturally, they had many grievances with each other. Actually, there were not only these two groups of troops here. There were close to 10,000 soldiers, and one could even see some Sky Fox Race people. However, what was worth paying attention to were the top elites of Yunxia Mountain and Blazing Flame Mountain. This Jiefu city was shared by the few hidden sects of Donglin Cloud Continent. Although Hu Zhongyuan wanted to borrow the strength of Xian Mountain City to swallow them up, he didn't dare to be arrogant here. He could only snort softly and hide his killing intent. There were so many people here, and they couldn't all head up to Jiefu City. Only Zhongshu and a few others boarded the ship and boarded the floating city. The moment they stepped in, Hu Zhongyuan was delighted. Yunxia Mountain's Fengyu, Blazing Flame Mountain's Xiong Kuei, these two really came. Zhongshu followed his gaze and looked out, only to see that on the two sides of the wooden corridor there were groups of people. The one on the left was thin and strong. The King Race Wind, Leopard Race people of Yunxia Mountain were mostly of this body type. It should be Yunxia Mountain's Fengyu. As for the muscular man, not far away, who was 4 times his size, he was most probably Blazing Flame Mountain's Prince Xiong Kuei. The latter was calm and unruffled, looking over with interest. The former's eyes were cold as he swept the people around Zhongshu. When he saw Tan Tao, his brows furrowed, and he was about to turn around and leave. However, he stopped his body, his eyes focusing on Zhongyuan, laughing coldly. You actually broke through to the martial ancestor realm. What good luck. I thought that you would only be a peak Xiantian in your life. When Zhongshu heard that, he felt really happy. This was the first time he didn't become the target of mockery. How rare. Zhongyuan's face instantly turned ashen white. Last time you were lucky to escape. I heard that you spent many months recovering. Who knows if you're fully healed? Hey, next time on the battlefield, you won't have such luck. I'll take your head. My room just so happens to be lacking chamber pot. Even if you kneel down and beg like last time, it is useless. As Fengyu said that, he was deep in thought. I heard that a few days ago you accompanied your prince to cause a huge ruckus in Xian Mountain City. Does this mean that you've already changed your allegiance? In the past, I thought that you didn't have much ability, but at least you were smart. Now it seems like you were just a fool. The Sky Fox Race's youngest genius. After he finished, he coldly looked at Zhongshu. After a violent intent flashed in his eyes, he waved his sleeves and left. When that person left, Xiong Kuei smiled towards Zhongyuan. I didn't expect that you would really kneel in that battle. I'm not as perverted as Fengyu. If you can kneel down and beg for mercy, I will spare your life. Zhongshu was shocked. Kneel down and beg for mercy? What was going on? Looking at Hu Zhongyuan beside him, the latter instantly understood, explaining softly in his ear, they are old enemies. The 3 of them are about the same age, and are all geniuses who rose up at the same time. They have fought several times on the battlefield, and are known as the 3 rising talents of the monster race in the west of the Donglin continent. Before Xiantian, they were all neck and neck. After Xiantian, Zhongyuan was left behind. 2 years ago in the battle, Zhongyuan was hit by Fengyu's huge sword until he knelt on the ground and couldn't stand up. Although he didn't beg for mercy, if it wasn't for the ruler sending people to save him, he would have died. Because of that, his reputation fell, and he was overtaken by Zhongshu. Zhongshu acknowledged. thinking to himself that the three of them actually had such grievances between them. No wonder Zhong Yuan's spear strength had so many weaknesses. Although Hu Zhongyuan's voice was soft, Zhong Yuan could still hear some of it. His body was already trembling slightly, as if he was extremely angry. At this moment, his face was flushed red and his eyes were bloodshot. His fists were tightly clenched. He only felt an indescribable sense of shame, wishing that he could pull out his spear and have a vicious battle with the two of them. Suddenly, he felt that not far away, there was a cold gaze looking over. Zhong Yuan's brows furrowed as he looked back, only to see that the person opposite him had a pair of sky fox ears, looking really familiar. However, at this moment, this person's eyes, which should have been warm and gentle, were filled with cold rage and hatred. Zhong Yuan only felt his chest thud, his heart sinking to the bottom of the valley, like it was soaked in ice water, feeling cold. Zhong Shou was too lazy to care about his feelings, directly finding the branch of the Sanlu Bank in the city. The so-called Sanlu Bank was also opened by a hidden sect. Speaking of which, it had something to do with Lei Dong. Behind this bank were the few sects under the Kinzo sect. Wujue Villa was within, as their business was only in the central, Donglin, and Nanfeng cloud continents, which is why it was called the Sanlu Bank. Only this place had verified Zhong Shou's bloodline and was strong. Only then would he not leave behind such a huge fortune that others would be tempted by it and try to snatch it. This bank had really tight defensive methods. Even if one kidnapped or killed Zhong Shou, they wouldn't be able to get a single mind stone, which was why on this journey, no one had any thoughts about this fortune. When Zhong Shou finally obtained a list of all the items that Zhong Weiran left behind, he couldn't help but take in a deep cold breath. There weren't many beast crystals and mind stones here, only 10,000 grade 3 and grade 4 beast crystals and mind stones. It was similar to the number that Yin Yang told him. However, this should only be the pocket money that Zhong Weiran gave him. On this list, the most eye-catching thing should be the line of words at the top. A total of 57 grade 7 beast crystals, 40 grade 7 soul stones, 19 grade 6 mind stones. There were also 20-odd spiritual artifacts, which were probably grade 5 and above, spiritual weapons, and armor. As for pills, there were also hundreds of bottles. However, Zhong Weiran probably didn't think that he could cultivate, which was why he left behind pills that spirit masters needed. From the spirit cultivation realm to the day wandering realm, it was all there. Damn, young master, my eyes must have gone bad. 57 grade 7 beast crystals, 40 grade 7 soul stones. It's actually so many times? Isn't this several times higher than our Gantian mountain income? Hu Zhongyuan looked on from the side, his eyes filled with dizziness. I'm a little dizzy. I can't take it. Why is the ruler so rich? Zhong Yuan's eyes also widened. If it wasn't for him knowing that these things wouldn't fall into his hands, and that he wasn't Zhong Shou's opponent, he would have thoughts of killing him to steal the treasures. Zhong Shou suppressed his emotions, hiding his trembling hands into his sleeves. Then, he glanced at Hu Zhongyuan in disdain. This fellow really couldn't be used. For such a small amount of money, he made a huge fuss. He really didn't have the aura of an expert. Chapter 199. Actually, the Iron Tiger race couldn't be considered poor. When one reached the Xuanwu ancestor level, when one hunted in the Cloud Ocean, not only did they not need to hand over beast crystals, but they also needed to take offerings from Gantian Mountain. Apart from that Tai Qianxiu, within the Iron Tiger race, there were several 7 meridians of the Earth Chakra level. Their income was also huge, at least 40,000 grade 4 beast crystals a year. Hu Zhongyuan as the Iron Tiger race leader and also a martial ancestor expert. Even if he couldn't be compared to him, he should have at least 2,000 grade 4 beast crystals. Making such a big fuss was probably mostly an act. Zhong Shou thought about it seriously. He first took out a purple long spear from the bank, a tight-fitting soft armor, and a few useful spiritual artifacts. Apart from that, He also added a stack of top-grade, true spiritual talisman papers, as well as pills and soul stones. Zhong Weiren had spent a lot of effort for his son. There were many miscellaneous items in the bank, and most of them belonged to spirit masters. It could be said that there was everything that one could wish for. There were even tens of precious spirit master cultivation methods, as well as talisman books, making Zhongsho surprised. Coming out from the Sanlu Bank, Zhongsho headed straight for the trading area of Jiafu City. In the central hall of this cloud, desolate era ship, there was a full 50,000 feet of space. There were 2 spirit tools that were specially made here. There were spirit masters at the side presiding over them, forming an enormous light screen. People who came to trade didn't need to set up stalls or search around. All they had to do was let the spirit master cast a spell to form a string of words on the screen. It was extremely convenient. Only some really precious items would be auctioned off separately. However, on the screen, there were some words notifying them. However, Zhongsho stood in front of one of the screens and hesitated. When a spiritual wave arrived wave after wave, it wasn't only beast crystals and mind stones that were dropping. The other fur materials and various spiritual herbs were also dropping. Even the gold and silver that people of the Cloud Continent used fell a little. What was it called in the future? Inflation? That didn't seem right. Anyways, with the increase in resources, beast crystals and mind stones, the items that could be exchanged for were shrinking. However, most of these were items that normal people used. For example, food, metal ores, and other resources. Between each other, there would also be intense price fluctuations due to the amount of production. There were only a few hundred types of commonly used goods, and there were also some spirit treasures that were still extremely rare, even in the era of the spirit tide. That was why the price had always been stable. It was not difficult to maintain his value, but Zhongsho was more concerned about earning more money. After he returned, it wouldn't be easy to control such a huge business like Gantian Mountain. How could he not have some background? After pondering for a moment, Zhongsho already had an idea. Gritting his teeth, he said, "Brother Hu, get someone to help me send out a few notices. I want to buy 250 million Ashi Dawn, 250 million Yuan Quenching Dawn, 450 million Bone Refining Dawn, and 450 million Meditation Dawn. 150 million Profound Nurturing Pills. 150 million Brightening Soul Pills. As long as they're concocted within 20 years, I'll be taking all of them today. Right? There are also weapons and armors. All talisman weapons, grade 2 and below spiritual weapons. I'll buy as many as you have." Hu Zhongyuan was startled. His first thought was that Zhongsho had gone crazy. 2 days ago, he had personally heard Zhongsho tell Xian Yuantong that beast crystals and mind stones might depreciate greatly. Although he didn't agree, he wasn't willing to say much. After all, these were things left by Zhong Weiran, and Zhongsho could use them however he wanted. Since that Xianyuan city lord also fully supported him, then there might be a chance. However, he didn't expect that Zhongsho would be so crazy. Even if he wanted to maintain his value, he should have bought other things. Why want to buy the most basic grade 1 pills? Like the pills that Zhongsho mentioned, as long as one had opened up their soul ocean and grasped soul power, they could refine them. As the materials were really common and the production was huge, many powers and hidden sects used them to develop their own alchemists. Although the production was huge, only 80% of them could be used. These pills were either used to train the body, help with breathing, or help with meditation. However, they couldn't increase soul power and true qi, so eating too much of them was useless. In this Donglin Cloud Continent, there were only so many cultivators and spirit masters who had the talent to reach the martial master realm, as well as the second realm of spirit masters. Hence, each year there would be a large number of them hidden in the treasuries of the various powers. After a few decades, the pills would deteriorate and be abandoned. Zhong Weiran only had 10 years of history in Gantian Mountain, but the basic pills stored in the treasuries were close to 100 million. On the market, it was the price of cabbage. It wasn't worth it to sell them, but to store them, one could only wait for them to deteriorate. Was Zhongsho going to buy these things to rot his hands? As for the weapons and armors, they were a little better, at least they had a longer shelf life. However, Gantian Mountain's blacksmithing industry was already really developed, so they didn't need to buy them. Even if they bought them, they could only seal them up. At this moment, not only was Zhong Yuan shocked, but even Chu Shui and Zhong Yuan were stunned. Tan Tao took in a deep breath, and a moment later he understood. So the prince thinks that in the next few years the spiritual energy will increase, and the number of people who have the ability to break through to martial master will greatly increase? If that's the case, then buying these pills is worth it. The city lord has already ordered that Xian Mountain City and the young city lord will advance and retreat together. We don't have many beast crystals in our storage, just the meridian energy pill and foundation stabilizing pill. Seeing that Hu Zhongyuan still didn't understand and looked over, Chu Shui and Zhong Yuan also had a questioning look on their faces. Tan Tao frowned, but he still explained, as the number of people breaking through to martial master increases, the demand for these supporting pills will naturally increase. Beast crystals and mind stones, as well as ingredients and herbs, due to the changes in heaven and earth, will also increase greatly. However, those pills could only be refined by a Tier 1 alchemist. However, in such a short time, how can the various powers develop so many pill refiners? Only then did Zhong Yuan and Zhong Yuan understand. Pill refiners and blacksmiths were the same. They had to go through a total of 3 grades of alchemists before they could truly grasp the ability to craft pills. To develop a pill refiner, even if the herbs were blocked, it would at least take 5 to 6 years. During this period of time, the lack of pills was enough to cause the price of these basic pills to rise to a shocking level. Chu Shui still didn't understand, not understanding the cause and effect within. Seeing this, Tan Tao shook his head inwardly. He thought to himself that these trusted subordinates of the crown prince might have good martial talent, but they were all idiots. Hu Zhongyuan didn't know that Tan Tao had already marked him as an idiot in his heart. After understanding what Zhongsho meant, that this time they would most likely earn and not lose anything, he happily walked to the side of the light screen to look for the hosting spirit master. Stuffing out a few mind stones, in just a moment, a few lines of words appeared on the light screen. It was roughly that the Gantian Mountain Prince Zhongsho wanted to purchase 250 million nashi pills, 250 million energy containing pills, etc., as well as various types of weapons and armor. At this moment, Hu Zhongyuan's eyes rolled. Whether or not they could earn money this time depended on whether or not the production of beast crystals and mind stones increased. Thinking back to these few Cloud Ocean hunts, the number of beast crystals and soul stones they obtained did indeed increase by a lot. This was especially true for the 1st to 4th stage, where the number of 1st stage cultivators increased exponentially. Speaking of which, the situation wasn't right. A bright glow appeared in Hu Zhongyuan's eyes. Without hesitation, he handed out another mind stone to the spirit master, who was still in shock. On the light screen, a line of words was left. Thinking to himself that the heavens would protect him and let him earn a huge sum. Even if he didn't earn, he couldn't lose out. If my old man finds out that I've squandered all of his pension money, he'll definitely be pissed. When the words were displayed, at the start, no one in the hall noticed. A moment later, there was a buzz. The entire hall was filled with the sounds of discussion. Gantian Mountain Prince, isn't he that trash prince? Is he crazy? 250 million nashi pills, 250 million energy containing pills, 250 million energy tempering pills. What does he want these basic pills for? I have heard of this fellow. I heard that a few days ago, Xian Mountain City, Xin Yuan Tong, made him the young city lord of Xian Mountain City. He is determined to stick his daughter into this pile of cow dung. Why would he do such a stupid thing at such a time? Such a huge amount. Adding it all up, wouldn't it cost 400,000 grade 4 mind stones? And that armor and talisman weapon, where did he get so much money? You don't have to worry about that. Look at the last sentence. Sanlu Bank's gold note transactions. This is a gold signboard and can't be faked. Whether or not this kid has the money, just ask the bank. However, buying all these things, does this prince have a problem with his brain? Sho's lips curled up when he heard that. Although she called him an idiot and a prodigal, many words entered his ears. It made him a little unhappy, but on the whole, his mood was still very good. This feeling of everyone being drunk and him being the only one sober, TSK. The transactions he wanted were all huge amounts. Only those big powers and hidden sects and aristocratic families had the ability to take them up. He guessed that they still hadn't reacted, so he went to the side and found an auction hall that auctioned grade 3 and above items. He actually didn't have the heart to buy things, but he was rich. No matter what he faced, he would randomly bid. He could often accurately guess the bottom line of others. After raising the price to an extremely high level, he would immediately back off, causing everyone in the hall to be furious. Their eyes were spitting fire as they looked at this person who harmed others without benefiting himself. The auctioneer was so happy that he was beaming with joy. However, just an hour later, the auctioneer couldn't be happy anymore. As long as Sho wanted something, no one dared to compete with him. Everyone knew that this was a dumb rich man who threw out 400,000 grade 4 mind stones to buy basic pills, so no one dared to go against him. It wasn't until the auctioneer wanted to cry, but no tears came out, that Sho's brows furrowed slightly, revealing a serious expression. Chapter 200. What is going on? That trash. Why is he buying these useless basic pills for? It wasn't just the trading hall that was in an uproar after hearing the news on the screen. Almost all of the merchants that were stationed here were in a mess. Within this Jefu city, in a room close to the main hall, Feng Yu was frowning as he looked below in confusion. No matter how dumb he is, there should be a level. 250 million nashi pills, 250 million essence-containing pills, and also an unlimited purchase of weapons and armor. The people around him won't even try to persuade him. What is that Sho planning? Could it be that there's some deeper meaning behind this? Hearing Feng Yu mutter to himself, Xiong Kuei smiled. It seems like before Zhong Weiran disappeared, he left a huge sum of money for the prince. That is true. Hundreds of thousands of grade 4 beast crystals, just the amount he took out today. It is pretty much the same as most of the hidden sects. Feng Yu scoffed coldly. At this time, how would he have the time to bother about such things? No matter how much money the prince had, if it was stored in the Sanlu Bank, they wouldn't be able to take it. With the support of the Kinzo sect and the other large sects, as long as they believed that Sho was forced or not willing, they could refuse to pay. Even the head of the 10 shrines, tailing sect, wouldn't dare to offend them, much less them. Stop talking nonsense. What is your blazing flame mountain planning? Same as you, hesitating. Xiong Kuei sighed slightly, walking in front of the window. Who knows what that trash is planning? Our blazing flame mountain also has quite a number of elementary spirit pills. After accumulating over the years, we have around 80 million. Along with the purchases from the subordinate cities, we have a total of 170 million. This chance to sell at a discount is hard to come by. Moreover, even if we don't do this business, other people will. Feng Yu also looked down. He could see that within the 60,000 feet wide trading hall, there were many heads moving about. Numerous people were whispering to one another, which is why I am too lazy to care about his reason. Maybe that prince really went crazy. Xiong Kuei said as he glanced at Feng Yu, filled with cold disdain. You and I are both smart people. Why do you need to say such things to mislead us? Sell these pills. It is enough for our blazing flame mountain to expand by 200,000 elites to last for 3 years. Aren't you planning this in your heart? As long as you get that Dragon Canyon and occupy a few Gantian Mountain or our blazing flame mountain mine stone veins, no matter if this deal is a profit or loss, it is worth it, right? Feng Yu's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he smiled. What a great Xiongke of the blazing flame mountain. Your flame bear bloodline is really an anomaly in my demon clan's bear clan. After he finished speaking, he actually walked out of the door and left. TSK, isn't your wind leopard clan the same? Xiong Kuei sneered coldly. Then, his eyes narrowed as he pondered over the mysteries of this huge deal. A moment later, he mocked, That trash is most probably a fool. With so much money, wouldn't it be better to use it to expand the army? Or perhaps he could have won over a few powerhouses to protect his life. Yet, he chose to buy these low-grade medicinal pills. It was truly incomparably stupid. From the auction hall, under the knife-like gazes when he walked out, Zhongsho had 4 earth energy pills in his hands. He bought them at the base price, using a total of 6,000 grade 4 mind stones. The human pinnacle pill could allow a person who didn't know martial arts to enter Xiantian in a short few years. Not only was his foundation really firm, but it could also extend his lifespan by 100 years. Normally, it was around 1,500 grade 4 mind stones. The effects of this earth energy pill were slightly stronger, and the effects were really quick. As long as one was an earth chakra expert and below 7 meridians, anyone who ate it could easily open up a meridian. Xiantian masters below 3 meridians could open up 2 to 3 meridians. The average price should be around 2,500 grade 4 spirit stones. The price was really expensive, and basically only Xuanwu masters who wanted to break through would buy it. Donglin Cloud Continent only had less than 40 pills that flowed out each year. Even though shrines and sects didn't have many. Even large sects like Pill Fountain Sect, which was famous for their pill refining, would only open their furnace once every 2 years. Each furnace would produce less than 49 pills. In the auction just now, the auctioneer started at 1,500 and thought that these earth energy pills could be sold for at least 10,000. In the end, when Zhongsho bid, no one dared to compete with him. He directly bid a few beast crystals more than the base price and got the earth energy pill. Young master, you are such a bully. Chu Xue's eyes were smiling like crescent moons. I saw that those few people just now were so angry that they went crazy. It's just that the clothes look familiar. They look like Feng Shu. Zhongsho laughed out loud. To be able to have extra earth energy pills to auction here. Apart from that pill fountain sect, who else could it be? However, the people of this era were really honest and didn't even have any support. Or maybe they didn't expect such a thing to happen and weren't prepared. This time, it was truly a pleasant surprise. Hu Zhongyuan stared at the pill in Zhongsho's hand, his eyes shining, saliva dripping down from the corner of his mouth. Zhongsho smiled, waving an earth energy pill in front of Hu Zhongyuan. If you dare to eat now, I will give you one. At first, Hu Zhong was pleasantly surprised. However, after a short moment, he lowered his head in incomparable dejection. Without a picture, he really didn't dare to eat it. He could only look on as Zhongsho casually kept those few earth energy pills into his sleeves, feeling really regretful. Following which the expressions of the surrounding people turned solemn. Hu Zhongyuan's expression also turned serious as he looked forward. In front of him, there were tens of people with extraordinary auras, all looking at Zhongsho with shining eyes. 2 of them had just met not long ago. They were Yunxia Mountain's Feng Yu and Blazing Flame Mountain's Xiong Kuei. However, at this moment they were all smiling, not as cold as before, showing the face of a businessman. The positions of these 2 people were slightly at the back. The few people in front were either Xuanwu masters with high cultivation or return to Sun Realm spirit masters with strong soul power. Their auras were all retracted. If it was as expected, these people were most probably the few hidden sects who were in charge of matters within Jiafu City. The ones at the front were 2 people who smiled and nodded towards Zhongsho. Pill Fountain Sect, Outer Sect, Deacon Fong, Chun greets the prince. The other person opened his mouth at the same time. I am Kongqi Sect, Outer Sect, Deacon Xiaohan. I am here for the prince's business. Zhongsho was instantly delighted. From when he released the news till now, only 4 hours had passed. The reactions of these people were really quick. He didn't have much to say to these people. The location of the transaction was directly chosen at Sanla Bank. Through the bank, one would have to take 1% of the commission. However, it was better in terms of safety. The pills that he bought could be directly stored within the bank. There was no need to discuss the price. In Zhongsho's hands, he held 90 grade 7 beast crystals and soul stones. There were also many grade 6 mind stones. They were all things that martial cultivators and spirit masters drooled over. As for those basic pills, they were things that many powers were in a rush to sell. Even if they wanted to raise the price, they couldn't, directly lowering the market price by 30% to buy them in bulk. If they didn't want to sell, then scram, they would rather not do business with them. Naturally, at this moment, such a huge amount of spiritual pills couldn't be transported over in such a short amount of time. What Zhongsho liked the most were the hidden sects with small heaven and earth bags, which were easy to transport. The powers of the cloud continent cities were the most disliked. Large cities like Blazing Flame Mountain and Yunxia Mountain were okay. As for the small cities, they were scattered and didn't need to think about transporting pills to Jifu City. Luckily, Sanlu Bank had many branches, a total of 100 spread out all over Donglin Cloud Continent. As long as the pills were transported to the branch within 5 days, the transaction would be considered complete. However, with that, the bank would naturally need to take a cut. This made Zhongsho furious. He directly lowered the price of the bulk goods by 5% before he was satisfied. Only the gazes of these people made him annoyed. Before the transaction, they were all trying to get on his good side. After the transaction was completed, their expressions were filled with unspeakable, mocking intent. Especially that pill fountain sect, outer sect, Deacon Fong Chun, who directly sold close to 500 million basic spiritual pills. The pill master strength of the sect was undeniable. According to the legends, there were 50,000 outer sect disciples who had reached the level of Tier 1 alchemist. That number was most likely true. When the mind stones were in his hands, Fong Chun didn't even try to hide it. Apart from disdain, there was also the joy of taking revenge. It was like he was still brooding over the matter of the 4 earth energy pills. Only now did he take revenge. My pill fountain sect already knows about the prince being made the young master of Xian Mountain City. That Xianyuan city lord is really muddle-headed. He actually wants to marry Junior's sister here into you. Such a fool. Our pill fountain sect definitely won't acknowledge this marriage. Prince, take care of yourself. Hey, if your father knew that the money he left was squandered by you, who knows if he would be so furious that he would jump out of the oblivion cloud ocean. After he finished, he scoffed, looking down on Zhongsho with a sense of superiority before leaving. Zhongsho felt weird. Did that Fong Shu not rush back to Pill Fountain Sect? Was it the work of those two fellows? Speaking of which, a few years later, his cheap father really did jump out of the oblivion cloud ocean. Then, the foundations of Lingyun's sect in Dongling Cloud Continent were totally destroyed. Out of all the people in the bank who participated in the transaction, only an old servant of the bank didn't show any disdain. This was an old man around 70. His aura was something that Zhongsho couldn't see through. He had been sizing up Zhongsho with deep shock and a probing expression. When no one was paying attention, he shook his head and said, "The crown prince is indeed, as manor head Yin said, extraordinary. Your martial path and spiritual cultivation have actually reached such a realm. Even his business acumen was impressive. Why are the people of this world all blind?" To be continued. The people of this world are all blind. Chapter 201. Zhongsho was at a loss, taking a close look at the old man beside him. Thinking for a moment, he smiled. "Senior knows Villa Head Yin, so you must be a senior within the Kenzo sect. My eyes are bad and nearly didn't recognize senior. You're actually a day-wandering realm expert. However, it is okay for senior to say that my martial path and spiritual cultivation aren't normal. Zhongsho isn't a humble and pretentious person. Only, I don't know if I'm earning or losing in this business. Look at those people. They are all scolding me for being an idiot." The two of them didn't cover their voices when they spoke. However, apart from Hu Qinxiu, Tan Tao, and a few others, no one could hear them. When the old man heard that, he scoffed coldly. "That is because these people are the true idiots. I don't know how you deduced that the price of beast crystals is about to fall. Anyways, it seems like we're going to earn this sum, and the profits won't be small. Buying primary level pills to increase their value. This idea was really whimsical, but it was also a strange and sudden rise. Although my Wujua villa was prepared to dump the beast crystals, What we thought about was to buy some top-grade spiritual pills and herbs. Zhongsho thought to himself that this old man was not only from the Kinzo sect, but also from Wujue Villa. His expression didn't change since Senior said that. I am at ease. You big sects eat meat, while I am just a small shrimp. I can only drink soup. Whilst he spoke, he was looking at a person. It was the guy from the fox race that he saw before. Under his sleeves, 5 fingers were pointing towards Zhong Yuan, secretly changing the position of his fingers. It seemed really casual, but there was a pattern to it. Zhongsho was speechless. Was he bullying him for not knowing the secret code? He didn't read those books about this for nothing in the last life. 8 hours later, East Region Earth Word Corridor Room B. Did you want to meet Zhong Yuan? He was probably going to be disappointed. That old man didn't notice anything and laughed. A deal involving 1,000,000 grade 4 beast crystals wasn't just some soup. Donglin Cloud Continent was far from enough for Zhongsho's purchase. The other cloud continents and the hidden sects of the 12 islands were all involved. He could already faintly see that at least in the next few years, the price of these beginner-level pills would be controlled by the Crown Prince. Even he was faintly moved by such a huge profit. If it wasn't for him worrying about the trust of the Sanlu Bank and the reputation of the Wujue Villa, he would have gone all out to snatch this business. However, even if he didn't care about this, he probably wouldn't have the chance to do so. This Crown Prince would probably only need a few months to become a member of the same sect as him. Even if that wasn't the case, the power that stood behind this child was enough to cause all those who knew about it to shrink back. That Song Xingdao was someone who had fought against the 3 factions of Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism for 10,000 years and still wasn't at a disadvantage. The Kinzo sect might be strong, but they might not be able to win against him. Zhongsho didn't care much about the words of the old man from a bank. However, Hu Zhongyuan and Tantao were delighted. They made up their minds and knew that they were going to earn this money. There was nothing to worry about, their faces filled with joy. Even Chu Shui rolled her eyes, taking out all of her secret stash in one breath. She only had a few hundred grade 2 and 3 beast crystals, so naturally, she couldn't participate in this level of trade. However, in the trading hall, she collected some scattered goods. When Chu Shui happily walked back, the trade here was more or less completed. Not only did they purchase beginner pills and armor, but they also did some businesses that could have huge profits. Zhongsho was only worried that he wouldn't be able to use the beast crystals in the bank, which was why he made a few deals. The last person amongst these people was a little unexpected. It was the Kongqi sect outer sect deacon called Xiaohan. Zhongsho had been looking forward to meeting this person. Kongqi sect focused on crafting artifacts, so the talisman weapons and beginner spiritual artifacts in their storage would definitely be huge. However, within the sect, they also had pill masters. This Kongqi sect probably had at least 50 million in their storage. As expected, the moment this person opened his mouth, he wasn't disappointed. Our Kongqi sect has 7 million sets of talisman armor, 7 million talisman soldiers, bows, swords, and halberds. They are all accumulated over the years and are split into 3 grades. Beginner spiritual artifacts and weapons are a little less, around 3,000. The total price is around 10 grade 7 beast crystals. It can be exchanged for grade 6 mind stones. Now that the two of us have rushed over, you can discuss the price in person. Zhongsho was surprised. Talisman soldiers, talisman armor, and spiritual weapons were much harder to craft than those pills. Like Pill Fountain Sect, if they went all out with their 40 large Hunyuan furnaces, they could craft close to 40,000 beginner pills every 3 days. As for one talisman weapon and spiritual weapon, it would at least take a few days. Moreover, the sales volume was even wider and the consumption was also huge. Actually, the profit margin in terms of weapons would be several times that of beginner pills. Unfortunately, the quantity was a little less. For Kongqi sect to have so many treasures was already enough to surprise him. Although 1 million wasn't a lot, in Gantian Mountain City, only the Black Fox Iron Cavalry or the Iron Tiger Halberd Warriors, the elites of the elites, could equip such talisman armor. Next would be the other generals in the army, who could equip it. Following which, Xiao Han's tone changed. However, I came here today because I have another business to discuss with the prince. Can I invite the prince to make a trip with me? Zhongshou was filled with doubt, looking at this person. Since he said he wanted to talk, then it most probably wasn't about the beginner spiritual artifacts and talisman weapons that he was purchasing. Who knows what this Kongqi sect, outer sect deacon was trying to do. However, thinking about it, he still had hundreds of thousands of grade 4 beast crystals that he hadn't found. Some of the bigger sellers probably hadn't received the news. It was okay to follow and take a look. He nodded his head, allowing Xiao Han to lead him in front. Not long later, they arrived at the warehouse of a shop. As expected, it was one of the biggest hidden sects in Donglin Cloud Continent. The land they occupied within Jiafu City was really vast. Just this warehouse alone was 5,000 feet of space. When Zhongshou followed Xiao Han in, he was startled, only to see that in a corner of the warehouse, there were rows of neatly arranged armor. The dark red color was the style of full body armor. Helmets and face armor were all complete. They were supported by wooden frames, standing there quietly, shining with a metallic glow and giving off an extremely cold and sinister aura. At the side was a row of weapon racks, all 8 feet long halberds. There were also dark red bows and cavalry knives. Behind it was horse armor of the same material, also covering the entire body, only the style was a little weird. At the head area, there was a sharp horn that was extremely sharp. Just looking from afar, there was an aura of a golden spear and armored horse charging over. What Zhongshou paid attention to was that the surface of the armor didn't have a single rune. Looking at the aura, it was obviously a grade above spiritual artifact. All the weapons and armors were actually inlaid with runes and crafted. At a glance, a rough count revealed that there were actually a total of 4,500 sets. Grade 3 spiritual artifact? No, it seemed to be an armor forged after being simplified and castrated. It is between a spiritual artifact and a talisman artifact. Simply put, in a short period of time, power that could be used as a spiritual artifact couldn't be used for long. Not only did it need strong, true qi or spiritual energy to activate, but it also couldn't be used flexibly. Zhongshou's brows furrowed slightly as he observed closely. It seems to be a few years old. Some parts have been reforged and repaired. Deacon Xiao, are you going to sell all of this to me? Although that was the case, Hu Zhongyuan and the others behind all sucked in a cold breath. A full 4,500 sets of grade 3 spiritual artifacts. What kind of concept was that? Even if there were as many flaws as Zhongshou said, it would be worth at least 500,000 grade 4 mind stones, even 1,000,000. That's right. Xiao Han smiled. Is the prince interested? In this world, there aren't many sets of armor that can be used in battle. As for spiritual artifact grade ones, they are even rarer. Your Kongqi sect found these things from some ruins, right? 10,000 years old things. In the end, you can't sell them, right? Xiao Han's face was filled with awkwardness. Zhongshou curled his lips and laughed coldly. Without martial ancestor level strength, these weapons and armor are just trash. They aren't much stronger than normal iron. Moreover, they can only fight on horseback and not in formation. As for these horse armors, only dragon-horned winged horses can equip them. But in this world, where can we find so many dragon-horned winged horses? Dragon-horned winged horses and wind-winged dragon beasts were different. The former was a grade 4 beast comparable to Xiantian, while the latter was only grade 3. Although they both had the word dragon, dragon-horned winged horses had the bloodline of the true dragon race. The ancestor of the wind-winged dragon beast was just a fake dragon. Xiao Han's face had already turned ashen white. He originally thought that this Zhongshou was a dumb person. If not, why would he buy so many basic spiritual pills? Looking at it now, he seemed to know his stuff. Hu Zhongyuan and Tan Tao exchanged glances with one another, losing a lot of interest in these armors. Dragon-horned winged horses in the entire Donglin Cloud Continent, there were only 1,500 to 600 of them. Moreover, they were really expensive, even if Zhongshou was really rich and got the horses. Gantian Mountain couldn't gather so many martial ancestor experts. If they searched the entire 5 provinces, maybe 3 to 5,000 people would be able to find them. However, how could such an army weapon be casually handed over to others? If it was a single martial ancestor expert, if they had the money, why not buy a true grade 3 spiritual artifact? Xiao Han seemed to be trying his best to suppress his anxious emotions, explaining at the side, "Maybe the prince doesn't know, but this set of armor is the standard armor of the Wuya Country Blood Cloud Cavalry during the Cloud Desolate era. It was said that during that era, the 30,000 Blood Cloud Cavalry were invincible in the Cloud world. Close to 600 martial venerables and body-shaping experts died in front of the army formation. Once they gathered 1,000, they could form the Blood Cloud Breaking Formation. In the Donglin Cloud Continent, no one could stop them." Zongsho laughed, retracting his gaze uninterestedly. "Deacon Xiao, don't bully me because I don't read books. I know a little about the Cloud Desolate Wuya Country matters. The Blood Cloud Cavalry was invincible in the world, wiping out tens of sections. However, I also know how the 30,000 Blood Cloud Cavalry were wiped out. It was said that if there were less than 300 of them, there would be a fatal weakness, right?" Chapter 202. Looking at Xiaohan's face getting uglier and uglier, Zongsho couldn't take it anymore. However, he still had to say those words. "I heard that during the Cloud Desolate era, Song Shengdao only used 70 return to Sun Realm Spirit Masters during the war with Wuya Country. With a small plan, the 30,000 Blood Cloud Cavalry were wiped out. A return to Sun Realm Spirit Master, along with 100 to 200 martial ancestors who were prepared, could wipe out 300 lone Blood Cloud Cavalry. Wiping out Wuya Country. Did I remember wrongly?" As he said that, Hu Zhongyuan and the others were at a loss. Looking at the pile of armor and weapons, their gazes were like they were looking at trash. In Gantia Mountain City, the Sky Fox, Iron Tiger, Wind Bear, and I Wolf races were the strongest. However, even with the strength of the 4 races added together, they couldn't gather 300 Blood Cloud Cavalry. With so many flaws, even if the grade was higher, it wouldn't be of much use. Following which, Zongsho gave a final blow. "Apart from that, I remember that this set of armor needs to be paired with a special heart cultivation method, right? It's called something Blood Cavalry Kill Cultivation Method. I heard that it was lost. Anyways, if these things were good, you wouldn't have piled them up here." "Scoff, do you think I'm stupid?" Xiaoan was close to despair. This Zongsho couldn't cultivate and didn't have any spiritual cultivation. A piece of trash. How was he so knowledgeable? He originally wanted to give up, but after thinking about it, Xiaohan sighed slightly and decided to try harder. "Prince, our Kongqi sect has kept these things for a long time and didn't sell them. However, it was because other people didn't know what was good for them. I think the prince isn't someone without ambition. If Gantian Mountain wants to rule Donglin Cloud Continent, how can we not have an elite cavalry army? Just relying on one Black Fox Iron Cavalry is far from enough. The prince can't gather enough martial ancestors now, but that doesn't mean that in the future you won't be able to. That Blood Cavalry Kill Heart Cultivation method isn't lost. It's just that we haven't found some ruins in Wuya Country. If there are flaws under 300, then keep it above 300 and don't split up. If you don't like that they can only fight on horseback, our Kongqi sect can also help you modify them. Actually, with some slight modifications, these weapons and armors can still be used as Tier 1 spiritual artifacts." Zongsho's expression changed. Just as Xiao Han's mind was slightly shaken, he shook his head and said, "I'll think about it." Although Xiao Han was disappointed, he still had some hope in his heart. Since the day the Kongqi sect discovered these armors, he had not had a good day. Previously, they thought that they could easily sell it off at a high price, so the sect spent a huge amount of precious materials to repair it. In the end, he couldn't sell it no matter how hard he tried. Whether it was Donglin, Cloud Continent, or the other Cloud Continents, no one was interested in the Blood Cloud Cavalry armor and Blood Cloud Halberd Bow. Those hidden sects were able to beat up 300 to 500 martial ancestor realm experts and could afford the price. However, they weren't fools. Moreover, they could craft more suitable spiritual weapons and armor, so they didn't need this item. It had been piled up here for tens of years. Just the maintenance alone had cost a lot of beast crystals. Every time he returned to the sect, he would see the ugly faces of the elders in the sect. However, it wasn't Xiao Han's fault. Zhongshu acted like he was in deep thought as he looked around. Then, his gaze was fixed on another corner of the warehouse, only to see that there were numerous messy items piled up there. They were all spiritual weapons and artifacts. There were also some leather and ores mixed within. However, looking at their appearances, they weren't much. Zhongshu's brows rose up as he walked over. What is going on with these things? They seem to be from a long time ago, items from the Cloud Desolate era. Most of them are broken items. Xiao Han was originally thinking of what to say, but when he heard that, he smiled. Prince has good eyesight. What is piled up here are some broken Cloud Desolate era spiritual artifacts. Although these items are broken, some of the artifact crafting methods are still beneficial to our Kongqi sect. This is why our Kongqi sect would purchase some each year and send them back to the sect. Actually, not only our sect, the other sects also purchase broken spiritual pills and artifacts. These few years, for some reason, there have been many ruins and caves that have appeared. This is why there are many broken spiritual artifacts. Zhongshu smiled, too lazy to bother with him. He started a search within these items. He had no intentions of having any accomplishments in crafting, but the broken spiritual artifacts here were really useful to him. In just a moment, he pulled out a sword. On the sword body, it was actually carved with 9 unicorn qilin shapes intertwining with one another. Zhongshu casually took out a higher quality weapon from the side, casually slashing with the sword in his hand. It instantly broke, not even giving out a single sound. He couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. Before this sword was broken, was it grade 8? What a waste. This sword had no spiritual energy at all. There was a chip a foot away from the sword handle. It was obvious that it was already broken. Xiao Han glanced at it, his face filled with regret. What a waste. This sword was said to be the sword of the king in the Cloud Desolate era, able to gather the energy of the emperor. As it was made from mixed gold, we don't know the materials, so it would be tough to break it down. Zhongshu nodded his head and continued to search. In just a moment, he exclaimed. From the pile of broken spiritual artifacts, he took out a bright yellow pearl, thinking to himself that there was actually such a thing. To be thrown into the trash, this Kongqi sect really didn't know what was good for it. Looking at the other items, there were still many good items, but most of them were badly damaged. Zhongshu casually picked 10 items, be it in terms of appearance or grade. They were all decent. Especially a conch-like item, which he loved the most, playing with it in his hand for a long time before placing it down. Then, he turned around and raised 4 fingers towards Xiao Han. 2 grade 7 beast crystals, all the Blood Cloud cavalry armor and weapons, along with these items as gifts. I will buy them all. Xiao Han's eyes constricted, only feeling like his heart was being viciously grabbed by someone. He shook his head like a rattle drum. Impossible. This is 4,500 sets of grade 3 spiritual artifacts. Cavalry armor, horse armor, bow, halberd, and knife all set. The combined power of such a complete set of spiritual artifacts was comparable to a 4th stage spiritual artifact. Without 100 above grade 4 mind stones, how would one be able to do it? Moreover, it is an invincible killing weapon on the battlefield. 2 grade 7 beast crystals. To think that the prince can say such a price. No, then you can continue to keep it. The corner of Zhongshu's lips curled up, turning around without hesitation and walking out the door. Hu Zhongyuan and the others didn't agree with him buying these pieces of trash, so they didn't try to persuade him, immediately following. Xiao Han's face was alternating between green and white. After a short while, it was like all the energy in his body had been sucked dry. He said dejectedly, 4 grade 7 beast crystals, it can't be any less. Our Kongqi sect spent such a price just to repair them. We can't lose out. What does the money you spend have to do with me? Zhongshu grinned. looking extremely evil. You also said that after these things are modified, they are similar to basic spiritual artifacts. Moreover, in my eyes, they only reached such a level after the entire set was used, so their practicality is even worse. It is just close to 4,000 basic spiritual artifacts. Forget it. How about 3.5? I also want to form a good relationship with your Kongqi sect, especially Deacon Xiao. Just treat it as you owing me a favor. Originally, I really didn't want to buy it. Give me a dragon-horned winged horse to test the effects. It must be delivered within 5 days. All right, I heard that your sect is also buying and selling spiritual grade weapons. Can you give me 300 of those 3-armed giant crossbows? I will pay 10 grade 7 beast crystals. If you can help me keep it a secret, I can add 5 more. Xiao Han wanted to cry, but no tears came out. However, his heart relaxed. To be able to sell these items and earn back a few grade 7 beast crystals was already not bad. Although it wasn't much, their Kongqi sect hunted under the Cloud Ocean every year. However, with 10 ascended ancestors and 8-day wandering spirit masters working together, they could only obtain 8 to 10 grade 7 beast crystals. Although the sect had stronger experts, once they reached the Grandmaster level, if they dared to go down the Cloud Ocean, they would definitely die. With those few people taking charge under the Cloud Ocean, no matter how strong the sects were, it was useless. This time, they had actually earned a lot. They really had to thank Zhong Shou, that dumb. However, why did this fellow want to buy giant crossbows? When the time came, would they be able to afford it? Forget it, let's not bother about it. This was a huge business. Personally witnessing the Blood Cloud armor and weapons being moved into the Sanlu Bank treasury, from now on, they would be under his name. Zhong Shou's mood was really happy. He also booked a few guest rooms in this Jiefu city. Then, he took out those abandoned spiritual artifacts and started to think about them. Tan Tao and the others at the side were speechless. In his eyes, those armor were useless. Who knew what Zhong Shou was buying them for? However, when he tried to persuade him, Zhong Shou didn't bother at all. Hu Zhongyuan's brows were tightly furrowed. Even if he had money, he couldn't spend it like that. He wanted to say something, but stopped himself. He wanted to persuade him, but he stopped himself. Zhong Shou was helpless under the looks of these few people. He couldn't help but look behind him, thinking that his Ruo Shui was the best. No matter what he did, she would treat it as a matter of course. In your eyes, am I someone who will do things that will make a loss? Don't worry. Not only will I earn from this business, I will earn a huge profit. Seeing that Tan Tao and the others didn't believe him, Zhong Shou was too lazy to explain. He knew where the dragon-horned winged horse was produced, and he also remembered the blood cavalry kill heart technique in his head. A few years later, there would be numerous Xiantian masters who would advance to martial ancestor. However, he couldn't explain these things. Holding that conch-shaped object and playing with it, he observed it closely for a moment. With a thought, Zhong Shou caused Little Gold to leave his arm. It merged with this object. The ability that Little Gold awakened after grade 4 was the solid-state ability. On its own, it wasn't worth mentioning. However, if it combined with the mimicry ability from before, it was extremely strong. Like now, repairing this abandoned spiritual artifact. When those spiritual channels were completed in Little Gold's body, the spiritual formation within the conch started to cycle once more. In the next instance, numerous noises sounded out in the room. Sound listening, conch, it really is this thing. Zhong Shou's brows furrowed as he used a spell. A large portion of the noises were instantly removed. Zhong Shou used many different spells, causing the sound to change. Chapter 203. Young Master, what is this thing? Chu Shui tilted her head and looked curiously at Zhong Shou's hand. This conch-like thing could actually hear people talking. Sound listening conch, grade 7 spiritual artifact. I heard that within 1,000,000 feet, it can ignore any grade 4 and below spells. During the Cloud Desolate era, it was a spiritual artifact that was specially used for eavesdropping. I let Little Gold use a solidifying method to repair it. However, it can only have 30% of its original effect. Zhongsho laughed, his eyes filled with reminiscence. Apart from the sound-listening conch, there was a wall-penetrating mirror that could see through any wall within 1,000,000 feet. In the past, he had one in his hands and was curious about it. However, he didn't have the guts to steal it. After a good friend borrowed it, he didn't return it. That was just too evil. Everyone in the room was silent. It wasn't because of the sound-listening conch, but because of Little Gold. Then, everyone looked towards the grade 8 spiritual sword that Zhongsho took back. It could solidify and repair grade 7 spiritual artifacts. Then, repairing this 9 Shilin sword wasn't a difficult matter. They finally understood why Zhongsho would bring back these abandoned spiritual artifacts. A grade 8 spiritual artifact was worth 100 grade 7 beast crystals. They really earn a lot this time, especially Chu Shui. The teacup in her hand couldn't be held as it fell to the ground with a clang. In the past, Zhongsho always said that his spiritual pet was amazing, but she didn't believe it. Only now did she believe it, even if it didn't have any other skills. Just this solidifying method was really amazing. Zhongsho seemed to have guessed what everyone was thinking, shaking his head. It isn't as exaggerated as you all think. Even if Little Gold repairs it now, it can at most use 10% of its strength. Moreover, it can only be used for 60 breaths. Everyone didn't think much of it. To be able to use it for 60 breaths was not bad. In the next moment, they heard a moaning sound spread out from within the conch. And so strong, so comfortable, so me. Her voice was like a silver bell, extremely charming, and it was mixed with the sounds of slapping and heavy breathing. Hu Zhongyuan's eyes immediately lit up. Tan Tao remained calm and collected, but his ears perked up slightly. Chu Shui's cheeks were flushed red. Ruo Shui only blinked her eyes and was rather curious. Zhongsho was listening with great interest, but suddenly he felt 2 fingers pinching the soft flesh on his waist. He knew that this little brat Chu Shui was betraying her master. Feeling helpless, he could only change his hand seal. He changed his position. Then, a low voice sounded from the conch. Zhongyuan, that ungrateful bastard, would have elder brother and young master mistreated him. He actually dared to betray his master and defected to that trash of a prince. I think he doesn't want to live anymore. Everyone in the room was slightly startled. They all looked at Zhongsho with deep meaning in their eyes. Then another voice sounded out. Is it inconvenient for him? Or he didn't see our signal and didn't rush over? How can he not see it? 8 hours later, think of a way to meet here. He has learned those signals before. As long as he pays attention, he will know. That low voice laughed coldly. Look at how he doesn't leave Zhongsho's side at all, looking so loyal. Half a month ago, he accompanied Zhongsho to wreak havoc in Xian Mountain City. Everyone knows about this matter. He most probably made up his mind to join that Zhongsho. Who knows if he is dumb or crazy? Following elder and young master, his future is limitless. Why does he have to jump onto a broken boat? Does he really think that Zhongsho has the support of Xianyuan Tong and will be able to sit on the Monster King throne? Zhongsho blinked. So he had guessed the signal correctly. It was actually this room. Just as he was feeling gleeful, he heard the voice from the sound shell ring out once more. Do you think that he already knows about that matter? If not, it doesn't make sense. Elder has doted on him so much these few years. With his personality, he doesn't look like a disloyal person. Impossible. That matter was really secretive. Even when Ruler went all out to investigate, there were no results. He is a person with no power and no power. How would he know about it? During that battle, apart from Brother and us, everyone else died. The dead tell no tales. Everyone knows that his father died in battle because he couldn't win. It was the ruler's army that came late to save him. Zhongsho was stunned. What he meant was his original intention was to listen to what they had to say. If it was possible, he wanted to plant a thorn in Zhongyuan's heart. To actually hear such an explosive and melodramatic matter. He didn't know what kind of conspiracy was going on here. That younger voice paused slightly. Since it isn't because of that, then the trick that Elder left in his spear technique has been noticed. With his talent, It isn't weird for him to notice the flaws in his martial path foundations. For this kid to be able to charge into the martial ancestor realm so early, there must be a reason. What does this have to do with my brother? Side sect disciples can't learn direct sect techniques. For brother to help him find a few remnant secret techniques, even if this Zhong Yuan knows about it, he should be really grateful. That low and sunken old man's tone was obviously impatient. If it was up to me that year, I should have killed this kid. Brother saw that his talent was not bad and wanted to let him live. Scoff. The veins on Zhong Yuan's body were popping out, his muscles tensed up. His lower lip was bitten open. Threads of fresh blood flowed out. In his palms, there seemed to be 2 blood fountains flowing. His red eyes were looking at Zhong Shou with a pleading expression. His face was changing from green to white, his lips white like a dead person. His tone was weak and powerless. Don't play anymore. I beg you, Prince, stop the sound. Please don't play anymore. There was a faint tremor in his voice, and it was also filled with deep despair. It was filled with hatred that was carved into his bones. The sound from the sound, listening, Conk continued. Actually, brother wanted to take his mother as his second wife, but her temper was too stubborn, and she would rather die than remarry. Scoff. If she pitted her son a little, this Zhong Yuan would have had a chance to become a direct descendant of our Zhong family. Unfortunately, before his words spread out, there was a loud holler. A purple lightning spear pierced out, instantly reaching the limits of the human world. Caught off guard, even Zhong Shou couldn't react in time. The sound shell in front of him was flicked away by the spear, and the sound stopped. While Zhong Shoxin was in pain, he was also shocked. As expected from the genius that Zhong Weiran had his eyes on, that spear exceeded the strength of the martial path. Although he purposely went easy on him, it was indeed unexpected. To be able to maintain such a spear technique, even he might not have the confidence to win. He hurriedly took back the sound shell. There was also the cloud, desolate, era spiritual artifact. The materials were really strong. Little Gold also didn't take it head-on, so there wasn't much damage. Only then did he relax. However, when Zhong Shou turned around and was about to scold him, he saw that Zhong Yuan was covering his face with his hands, his body slightly trembling. Although there was no sound, tears dripped down from his fingers. He was actually crying. Zhong Shou was instantly speechless, his heart more or less feeling a little guilty. Thinking about it for a moment, he smiled. Right, Zhong Yuan. Do you want to personally cut off the heads of Yunxia Mountain Fengyu and that blazing flame Mountain Xiong Kuei to use as a wine pot? No, a piss pot. Zhong Yuan was startled, raising his head in shock, following which Zhong Shou flicked his finger, and a pill flew over. If you have such intentions, then you have some courage. Within 5 days, charge to the 4th meridian of the Earth Chakra level. With this Earth Energy pill, don't tell me you can't do it. Hu Zhongyan was instantly envious. Tan Tao was also slightly moved. He didn't agree with Zhong Shou's words about cutting off the heads of Yunxia Mountain Fengyu and Blazing Flame Mountain Xiong Kuei to use as a piss pot. If the heads of those 2 princes were so easy to chop off, they would have been chopped off long ago. The basic spiritual pill transaction still needed to be completed in 5 days. During these 5 days, Zhong Shou decided to just stay in Jifu City. Every day, he would take a purple spear and a set of soft armor and play with it. These 2 spiritual artifacts were left by Zhong Weiran and were grade 5 spiritual artifacts. Zhong Shou naturally didn't have the ability to modify anything. He could only add some things on top of the original foundations. More accurately speaking, it was 2 small spiritual formations. Luckily, these 2 spiritual artifacts were refined internally. With his attainments in talisman formations, he could barely do it. 5 days later, on the inner layer of the armor, there was an additional layer of closely packed blood runes. It was the same on the purple spear. At the tip of the spear, there was a yellow jade pearl the size of a longan. It was the item he got from the pile of trash in the Kongqi sect treasury a few days ago. The talisman formation on the armor along with my soul controlling technique. Even a 10,000 army, I should be able to accurately control Zhong Yuan's body as long as he doesn't resist. This energy-gathering pearl, along with the spiritual formation on the spear, should be able to absorb some energy during battle. Unfortunately, the efficiency is a little low. I need to store some first. Zhong Yuan's strength is still a little weak. It's best if I buy a high-grade external pill. And these two spiritual formations can't be damaged at all. What a headache. All right, my spear technique. Those few fellows who were part of the Seven Emperors all said that I was muddle-headed. Is it really that bad? Using a spear to replace a sword isn't that far off. Why use a spear? Didn't they also fail to beat me? As for the formation charging technique, I should be able to pass. Only that spiritual technique is hard to deal with, and I need to prepare some talismans. Looking at the results of these 5 days, he muttered to himself. Chu Shui suddenly ran back into the room like a maniac, her face flushed red with excitement. Young master, it fell. It fell. Zhong Shou's thoughts were broken, coming back to his senses and asking, What fell? You fell while walking? No. Chu Shui shook her head like a rattle drum, panting. Its beast crystals, all the beast crystals and mind stones are plummeting. It fell by 3 times in an instant. How scary. Only then did Zhong Shou's brows furrow as he walked out in large strides. Walking to the Jiefu city's transaction hall, he saw that the place was in an uproar. Everyone was panicking and at a loss. On the 2 huge screens, there was news of people selling spirit stones and beast crystals. Looking out, it was extremely eye-piercing. Chapter 204. It really dropped by more than 3 times. Zhong Shou took a close look. A weird glow flashed across his eyes. The selling news on the screen was still crazily increasing. The price was also swiftly dropping. Looking out, there were numerous news of purchasing various spiritual pills, spiritual artifacts, and resources. Without exception, they were all using beast crystals and mind stones to trade. It pretty much took up the entire screen. The most extreme one was that compared to 4 days ago, it was 4 times of what it was. The same 10,000 kilograms of food could be bought with 1 grade 1 beast crystal, but now it required 4. However, Zhong Shou's eyes were filled with surprise and shock. In his memory, this wave of beast crystal and mind stone prices shouldn't be so exaggerated. Moreover, it should have happened 6 days later, and it only dropped by a little more than 2 times. However, today not only did it drop by close to 4 times, but it was also far from stopping. Crown Prince, it's a little strange. Even if the spirit tide is increasing, it's still not enough. Even if the spiritual tide increases, the beast crystals shouldn't have dropped so drastically in such a short time. Tan Tao furrowed his brows and looked at the crowded hall with a strange expression. His face flushed red with excitement. Not only did the prices of beast crystals and mind stones drop, but those basic pills, especially the Suyuan pill prices, were also crazily increasing. Although the amount of beast crystals that Xian Mountain City took out wasn't as exaggerated as Zhong Shou, it reached 200,000 grade 4 beast crystals. Looking at the close to 6 times profits in the blink of an eye, even he couldn't help but feel emotional. With this money, it was enough to develop 10,000 elite cavalry, like the mysterious armor-wind dragon cavalry. With Xinyuan Tong as the commander, they could easily wipe out half of the hidden sects below the spiritual house level. However, Tan Tao's eyes were filled with doubt. I originally thought that even if it was going to drop, it would be within 10 years. It should slowly drop. It shouldn't be so quick. Young City Lord, can you help me clear up some of my doubts? Zhong Shou couldn't help but roll his eyes. What was going on? At this moment, even he was confused. How could he explain it? However, at this moment, it was not only Tan Tao. Even Hu Zhongyuan, Chu Shui, and Ruo Shui looked over curiously. He didn't care about the first 2 and couldn't be bothered with them, but he couldn't win against the last 2. Especially Chu Shui's sparkling, pitiful, and watery eyes. Her lethality instantly knocked him down. After pondering for a while, Zhong Shou said with an enigmatic smile, "You guys have underestimated the amount of beast crystals and spiritual stones that those holy lands and spiritual houses have. In the past, the reason why they had been stored was so that they could get through the spirit decline period, which would last for an unknown amount of time. What's the point of hiding those beast crystals and spirit stones in the warehouse? In his memory, in the past 20 years, the few holy lands that had confirmed that the spirit tide was about to erupt were all doing their best. They silently changed the beast crystals and mind stones into various spiritual items. It wasn't until a few days later that more people noticed. The selling of beast crystals and mind stones first spread to the 19 spiritual houses, then to the other hidden sects and aristocratic families. In the end, the various powers of the 5 continents and 12 islands also went all out to sell. In a short few years, it caused the price of beast crystals to plummet 16 times. Mind stones were the same too. Only 10 years later did it slightly rise back up. However, the drop in price in his memory was controlled by someone behind the scenes and completed in an orderly manner within a few years. However, when he thought about that, Zhongsho had some ideas. Was it caused by him buying basic spiritual pills? In his last life, he had heard some scholars talk about it. If a martial artist threw 1 or 2 punches in his own courtyard, it was possible for a chain reaction to set off a storm thousands of miles away. In the past, he always felt that it wasn't reliable, but now he understood. It turned out that history wasn't always the same. Tan Tao couldn't help but think about it. Hu Zhongyuan and Chu Shui didn't care so much. As long as they knew the rough reason, they were earning like crazy. They were extremely excited and gleeful, nearly jumping up and down. Let all out. Zhongsho looked at the screen once more. In such a short time, it had dropped by 6 times. It was a total mess. It was obvious that numerous people had started to sell, and they were all anxious. Zhongsho's lips curled up. In such a situation, even if the few sect leaders of the shrines worked together to interfere, it would be useless. In his last life, he had fought in the market before. He knew that such a large-scale psychological panic had formed, and it was tough to turn around. Unless these shrines took out large amounts of resources to forcefully pull back the price. However, was that possible? The only thing he didn't know was the drop. Was it 10 times or 15 times? Just as he was calculating in his heart, Zhongsho's eyes suddenly looked not far away at an unusually desolate person that was familiar. Looking closely, wasn't that the Pill Fountain Sect Outer Sect Deacon Fong Chun? Zhongsho instantly gave out an evil smile, raising his hand. Oh, isn't that big idiot Fong? How's your Pill Fountain Sect's business today? Fong Chen's face was ashen white, and he was in a daze. Hearing Zhongsho's voice, he was stunned. Only after being stunned for a long while did he realize that the big idiot Fong was referring to him. He couldn't help but turn his head, looking at Zhongsho in rage and sadness. He wanted to rip him apart, but a moment later, he realized that he couldn't do anything to him. A moment later, he squeezed out a voice from the gaps of his teeth. Despicable. Zhongsho laughed. He was just a petty person who got what he wanted. He wasn't a righteous person, and magnanimity had nothing to do with him. When one was delighted, one should step back. Being called trash, did one have to bear with it? If he didn't give her in face, one day he would kill his way to Pill Fountain Sect. However, thinking about it, he decided that it was better to win people over. Zhongsho blinked his eyes. Forget it. After all, you are Iren's senior brother. I won't call you an idiot, although you are indeed stupid. How about this? I think that the beast crystals might drop to 10 times. Yesterday, you traded 500 million basic pills to me. You spent 10 grade 7 beast crystals. Now you can buy it back with 80. Does Deacon Fong dare buy it? If you miss this chance, there won't be such a good thing in the future. Fong Chun hesitated for a moment before scoffing, waving his sleeves and walking away, not bothering about him anymore. Zhongsho shook his head slightly. He was doing this because of Iren, and it was rare for him to be so kind. However, he wasted it just like that. As expected, he was an idiot. The group of people looked on quietly from the side. Everyone in the hall was panicking and at a loss. Only Zhongsho and the others had red faces, gleeful and satisfied, which was really eye-catching. Numerous people's eyes were filled with rage, as they looked over. Especially the tens of people who had traded with Zhongshou before. They wanted to swallow him up. Zhongshou himself didn't care much, but Tan Tao and Hu Zhongyuan knew that things weren't good. They forcefully dragged Zhongshou away from the hall. They were walking towards their suite from the corridor at the side. However, they only saw two people walking together. Zhongshou smiled when he saw the situation. These two idiots. Speaking of which, the two of them were always together. Did they have some kind of mood? Just as he wanted to reach out to greet them, he saw Xiong Kuei suddenly stop. He blocked in front of the few of them, his muscular body covering a small half of the corridor. He looked coldly at Zhongshou. If you were smart, then return those pills yourself. I can forget about this matter and not bicker with you. Zhongshou was stunned, thinking that the two of them were here to extort money from him. Feng Yu's face was also dark and sunken, his gaze burning like a poisonous flame as he looked over. In this world, there's never been anyone who took advantage of my Yunxia Mountain who can still live. If you don't want to die, then do what you want. Zhongshou broke out into a laugh, opening his mouth and revealing his white jade-like teeth, innocent and pure. Tan Tao, I am a little afraid. What do you think if I return those pills to you? Will these two fellows let us off in the future? Tan Tao was speechless, thinking about it seriously for a moment before shaking his head. Young City Lord, these two are evil spirits, those who eat people without spitting out their bones. I think it is best if you don't return them. If Young City Lord needs, my Shin Mountain City can send troops over. This prince was good at everything, but his personality was a little weird. Hu Zhongyin directly spat out. Our Gantian Mountain conquers the world. No matter where our troops go, we are invincible. It is just the Yunxiao Mountain and Blazing Flame Mountain. In this half a year, we have only started to shake a little. What is there to be delighted about? Xiong Kuei and Feng Yu were so furious that their bodies trembled, their faces dark and sunken. So we don't have to be afraid. Zhongshou squinted his eyes and looked back. What if threats don't work? Why not beg me? Who knows? Maybe I, Zhongshou, will be kind and return the pills to you. Those two gazes had already turned into blades, slicing up and down, causing one to feel pain. Zhongshou didn't care, shaking his head slightly. Why aren't you speaking? If there is nothing, then please move aside. Didn't you hear that a good dog doesn't block the way? Are the two of you really dumb? Xiong Kuei's eyes were spitting out flames as he stared right at Zhongshou. Then, he laughed coldly. Very good. After saying that, he didn't say anything more, directly turning around and leaving. As for Feng Yu, a storm was brewing in his eyes. I originally didn't want to kill you, but now I really want to eat your flesh and bones. I hope that in the future, there won't be another pot of urine in my room. He waved his sleeves and left, bringing a bunch of followers with fierce gazes. In a blink of an eye, they were nowhere to be seen. Tan Tao frowned. Although he didn't agree with returning those beast crystals and mind stones, it didn't mean that he wasn't worried. Young City Lord, I think it is best to be careful. I heard that Yunxia Mountain and Blazing Flame Mountain have at least 300,000 troops gathering towards Ruohai Mountain. Should we ask the city lord to move some troops over? Or we'll take the Yunhai Mountain route? This time, I'm afraid it's really dangerous. Zhongshou smiled and shook his head, his eyes regaining some seriousness. If he didn't know how dangerous the situation was, then he wouldn't need to fight for the Gantian Mountain Monster King position. This time, if he wasn't careful, it would be tough. Chapter 205. Zhongshou spent roughly 3 days in this Jiefu city. The selling momentum of low-tier medicinal pills was even stronger than he had imagined. It actually fell to about 24 times, and only after 2 days did it slow down slightly. It was close to 8 times more than the drop in his last life. At this moment, everyone in Jiefu City looked at Zhongshou with a red glow in their eyes. Their eyes were like they were looking at a gold mine, filled with greed and jealousy. However, no one dared to underestimate him. During these few days, a large portion of resources were crazily falling. Only those basic pills not only didn't fall, but instead exploded in price. Roughly estimating, Zhongsho took out hundreds of grade 7 beast crystals and similar items to purchase them. At this moment, if he changed the pills to beast crystals, that would be close to 70 times the price difference from a few days ago. One could even foresee that the price of these basic pills would explode in these few years. Zhongsho didn't hesitate at all. On the third day, he sold half of the basic pills at 20% lower than the market price to Sanlu Bank and the pawn shop opened by Taiyuan's sect. The manager of the pawn shop didn't hesitate at all to accept it. His eyes were filled with deep meaning as he gave Zhongsho a friendly smile. The old man from Sanlu Bank sighed. The prince's way of doing things is really admirable. Do you know that these basic pills, after a few years of careful manipulation, even if they increase in value by 5 to 10 times, it would still be enough? Zhongsho didn't reply. To increase the price to such a level, it would depend on what kind of person in power did it. Even if he could do it, he needed to be alive to spend it. The old man seemed to know the answer, his face surprisingly peaceful. You giving out these pills is the same as giving me thousands of grade 7 beast crystals. What do you need us to do? When he heard that, Zhongsho still kept silent and didn't speak, only rolling his eyes. He was thinking that this person wasn't as decisive as that person from Taiyuan's sect. That old man gave a bitter smile. Those crazy people from Taiyuan's sect can start a war with the entire cloud world without hesitation. Our Wujue villa doesn't have such confidence. Forget it. For this matter, my Wujue villa will take responsibility for the prince. 10,000 grade 7 beast crystals, he really couldn't bear to push them out. However, although we have stopped those hidden sects, we can't do anything about it. Below the Empyrean plane, you still have to rely on yourself. Right, Prince? I know of a return to Sun Realm Spirit Master who is rather reliable. Do you want me to introduce them to you? Zhongsho smiled. What he wanted was a reliable bodyguard. After only half an hour, Zhongsho walked out of the bank with satisfaction. Hu Zhongyuan and Tan Tao surprisingly didn't say a single word about the business he had made today. The way the latter looked at Zhongsho became more and more complicated. When it was time to make a move, he would not hesitate. When it was time to let go, he was decisive. He could not see through this crown prince anymore. Although those pills were sold at a cheap price, Zhongsho's wealth exploded from 100 grade 7 beast crystals to 7,000. When Zhongsho walked out of the bank, he saw the screen. The price of the beast crystals dropped by another 10%. These shrines and sects are really vicious when they do things. Respect, respect. After saying such random words, Zhongsho started to prepare to leave. Hu Zhongyuan didn't understand, but Tan Tao smiled faintly. Since they couldn't stop the drop, then they should just suppress the price and buy it back at a low price. In the future, they could also earn money. They didn't know how much these beast crystals were worth now, but in the future, the number of martial cultivators and spirit masters would increase along with the spiritual wave. The price would rise back up a little. It could be considered huge profits. Zhongsho saying that those shrines and sects were vicious wasn't wrong. On the last day, in Fujie City, they crazily bought things. When Zhongsho left, the number of carriages had increased by 3 times. There were 2 more people beside him, 1 male and 1 female. The male was called Li Luo, and the female was called Sherdan. They were both 40 to 50 years old. The latter was the return to Sun Realm Spirit Master that old Chao Feng recommended, and had already formed 8 true spiritual talismans. The former was personally sent over by the Taiyuan sect deacon. He was the same grade as Tan Tao, a Xuanwu ancestor with 7 meridians. However, when this person came, Zhongsho looked at him in shock. This person might not be as strong as Hu Qianxiu, and was even weaker than Zhu Junho. However, his combat strength could cross grades to fight, challenging 8 meridians. The 2 of them didn't want to speak much to Zhongsho and the others. They were just asked by someone to escort him to Gantian Mountain. They only bowed politely and stood at the side as if they were wooden statues made out of clay. Zhongsho himself didn't care, buying things on a large scale before leaving Jifu City. Tan Tao's suggestion to move troops from Xian Mountain City was something that Zhongsho didn't agree to. However, The 3,000 cavalry that followed were left behind by him. 500 Iron Tiger halberd warriors, 1,000 mysterious armor wind dragon cavalry, plus 3,000 cavalry. It was still 4,500 people, along with 1,000 odd carriages. They majestically entered Ruahai mountain range. On the third day, a few red swift birds were like balls of fire as they flew over from the distance and landed in front of Tan Tao. Their legs were wrapped in small golden sleeves. Tan Tao casually took out the paper from within, but he didn't even take a look before sending it to Zhong Shou's carriage window. After Zhong Shou opened it, he took in a deep cold breath. Then he face-bombed, saying with a huge headache, "I only earned some money from them. I only sold those pills for 300 grade 7 beast crystals. Why is it so exaggerated?" Only then did Tan Tao take the paper. When his eyes landed on it, the close to 7 digits number flashed. His body trembled slightly, following which he gave out a bitter laugh. 300 grade 7 beast crystals. This was like taking a knife from the bodies of these two powers. How could those two not hate him? Thinking about it seriously, Tan Tao calmed down. "Prince, if I am right, this Yunxia Mountain and Blazing Flame Mountain should be eyeing the Mind Stone Mines in Ruahai Mountain Range. Why don't we temporarily retreat back to Xian Mountain City?" Hu Zhongyuan's brows were originally furrowed, and he was a little unhappy. However, when he took the paper in his hand, he instantly changed his stance. It was best to quickly retreat. The 4 exits all had 200,000 and above troops. That was just crazy. To go from those few directions was no different from asking to die. Zhong Shou looked into the distance in deep thought. After a short while, he turned his head. "I heard that father used 1,000 iron cavalry to fight in the Cloud Continent. No matter how strong the enemy was, he didn't fear them. Gantian Mountain was the same. Only Gantian Mountain people died in battle. Even if they fought to the last person, they wouldn't take a step back. Is your Xian Mountain City all like that? Seeing that the enemy is strong, you want to flee?" At this moment, the cavalry nearby were pretty much all mysterious armor wind dragon cavalry. When they heard that, they all scoffed, their expressions filled with rage as they stared over with their eyes wide open. Tan Tao's hands were tightly clenched, suppressing the anger in his chest. Knowing that the enemy wasn't someone he could beat and still charging up, that wasn't bravery, but lack of strategy. He wanted to persuade a little more, but looking at Zhong Shou's mocking eyes, Tan Tao bore with it. His expression was cold. "Then let's follow what young City Lord wants. Which path is young City Lord prepared to take?" Cloud Stacking Mouth is flat with many clouds and mist, but the path is narrow. Hungjing Plains are huge, but there is a river blocking. Before he finished, Zhong Shou smiled. "There's no need to choose. Let's take Ruahai Straits, the one that once trapped 400,000 troops of our Xian Mountain City." Tan Tao clenched his teeth tightly. He could vaguely hear the sound of teeth cracking coming from his mouth. After a short while, he was barely able to open his mouth to speak. "Young master, do you know what you are saying? Although Ruahai Straits is huge and is the best place for cavalry, it is also the closest to Gantian Mountain, but it is also the best time to spread out the army. The other 3 places have at most 200,000 people. But this Ruahai Straits can have 300,000 troops. Even over 40 is possible. Once the back is blocked, we won't be able to escape." Before he finished, Zhong Shou directly interrupted. Tan Tao's expression was a little surprised. Following which he shook his head. "Tan Tao, you only know that it is tough to face a strong enemy. But do you know about martial strength, military strength, and country strength? We can't give in now. Xian Mountain City is surrounded by enemies. How many people can come?" Tan Tao frowned. It was obvious that he didn't understand. Zhong Shou didn't explain, saying expressionlessly, "Forget it. I won't explain to you. In the future, you will naturally understand. Anyways, we can't show weakness in this battle. So what if they have 400,000 troops? We will step over where they're the strongest. Since I started cultivating, the sword in my hand has never backed down. The sword is like that. The battlefield is also like that." Tan Tao's pupils constricted, looking at Zhong Shou in shock. After bowing slightly, he didn't say anything more. Li Luo and Shi Dan were slightly shocked. However, after exchanging glances with one another, they still kept silent. After receiving a message from the Red Swiftbird, these 4,500 cavalry, tens of thousands of war horses and beasts didn't slow down. Instead, under Zhong Shou's urging, they sped up. 2 days later, they arrived at the place known as Ruohai Straits. It was a canyon on the east side of Ruohai mountain range, surrounded by mountains. The first thing Zhong Shou did was to climb a few days with Tan Tao and look into the distance. This place was still hundreds of miles away. However, at this moment, there was a return to Sun Realm Spirit Master beside him. A Tao art was displayed, and a thin, transparent water mirror appeared in front of the few of them. The spiritual patterns within flashed, occasionally giving off ripples. However, one could see hundreds of miles away. Wow, it really reached 400,000. Hu Zhongyuan couldn't help but swallow his saliva, his eyes filled with shock, only to see 280 miles away within the canyon. Surprisingly, it was an army camp. It occupied tens of miles of land, extremely majestic. What Zhong Shou paid more attention to was the aura that charged up from the camp. There were close to 1,000 of them. Amongst them, there were 6 that could compare to Tan Tao. 6 Xuanwu ancestors, 2 returned to his Sun Spirit Masters. This battle isn't going to be easy. Alright, there are also those 2. Thinking back to Feng Yu and Xiong Ke, although they weren't Xuanwu ancestors, they had the combat strength of Xuanwu. The corner of Zhong Shou's lips twitched slightly. He knew that the opponent was strong, but to be so strong, even he didn't have much confidence in breaking through. It seems like I can only go all out. Let's hope that he doesn't disappoint me. Just as he was thinking about that, Zhong Shou exclaimed and looked behind him. In that instant, numerous cold glows flew over. Chapter 206. The sky full of light exploded out within 1,000 feet, instantly arriving in front of the few of them. Only when he got closer did he realize that they were extremely sharp silver nails. They shot over like a storm. They were only 3 inches long, but they were like crossbows shot out by Xuanwu ancestors. Just the glow from the tip of the nails was enough to pierce through everything. Behind them, there were a few people who followed closely. Like a shadow, he flew not far behind those iron nails. Their speed was also really quick. Many dark and cold gazes shot over from the nail veil. There was actually no one who wasn't a Xuanwu ancestor. This sneak attack was really sudden. Shi Dan was the first to react, waving her sleeves and scoffing. Spell Wind Whirlpool. Instantly, a wind whirlpool exploded out 100 feet in front of them. Balls of wind swept. Although it didn't sweep those nails away, it caused their momentum to freeze. Their trajectories were slightly messed up as they all moved to the side. Shi Dan's hands formed a seal, chanting once more, "Protector Beast Sword Slave, form a sword." A green mist gathered in front of her. Not long later, it took form. It was as if he was a living person, and he held a sword formed from soul power in his hand. His gaze was sluggish, yet sharp and awe-inspiring. Its aura was no weaker than Tan Tao's. Along with Shi Dan casting her spell, numerous gung metal spirits gathered on that soul sword. It actually showed a physical body. When that sword turned totally gold, it instantly caused a sky full of golden light, smashing away all the nails that got close. The next to react was Li Luo, lowering his waist. He didn't care about those silver nails at all. Like a leopard, he sped behind the nail veil. The 2 sabers in his hands, one long and one short, each carried a sharp saber chi, drawing a brilliant arc, madly twisting like a storm. Just the first knife caused one of them to spurt out blood. Those few people were obviously stunned for a moment. They exclaimed in surprise, but they did not continue to fight with him. Only 2 people were left to hold him back. The other 4 directly passed by. They were still at where Zhong Shou was standing as they charged over. Shi Dan frowned. At this moment, she was unable to cast any powerful spells. With another wave of his sleeve, another Class 6 soul beast appeared. It was over 30 meters tall, and its body was like a hedgehog. Its body was covered in scales and spikes, and it had the agility of a spirit leopard. It directly charged toward the person. The last ones to react were Hu Zhongyuan and Tan Tao. The former's expression was solemn as he crossed his two mandarin duck sabers in front of him, resisting the strong wind that was rushing towards him. Although the remaining 3 people hadn't arrived, the wind created by the fight between Li Luo and the other 2 Xuanwu ancestors had already reached here. In just an instant, the flat mountainside rocks were sliced into numerous holes by the sword Qi and blade glow. It was showing signs of collapsing. This caused the area within 100,000 feet to be filled with dust and strong winds. An ordinary Xiantian martial master at the initial meridian of the Earth Chakra realm had a strength of about 30,000 jin. At the 3rd meridian of the Earth Chakra level, it could increase to 45,000 kilograms. For martial ancestors with 4 meridians of the Earth Chakra level, it directly tripled to 150,000 kilograms. As for Xuanwu ancestors with 7 meridians of the Earth Chakra level, they had 5 million kilograms of strength and could shake mountains. Hu Zhongyuan's eyes constricted, like he knew that he wasn't the opponent of any one of them. However, he didn't retreat and instead advanced. It was still a tiger roar as he swept out without any regard for his life. With a heavy kung, this full-strength strike actually forced one of them back hundreds of feet. However, the other 2 didn't stop for even a moment. They didn't bother about Hu Zhongyuan, who was already powerless, as they continued to charge forwards. 2 incomparably tyrannical martial Dao wills fiercely pressed down. Tan Tao's face was covered in cold sweat. When the 2 Xuanwu ancestors were 100 feet away, Zhong Shou was stunned. Only then did they explode out under this vast pressure. He scoffed. The black and white mandarin duck sabers in his hands both shot out thousands of feet before swiftly retracting. It was only 200 feet, but it was more condensed and sharp, like the sabers in his hands had instantly expanded by tens of times. Like 2 balls of light, they covered the space 300 feet in front of him. Not only did he go all out, but this saber shadow was also the most perfect saber in his life so far. First, there were clanking sounds as those iron nails were all slashed away. Then, it clashed with the saber and sword glow of the 2 Xuanwu ancestors. In just a moment, they clashed numerous times. One of them spat out blood and retreated. However, Tan Tao's figure was also suppressed by the enormous force that came crushing down on him. Everything below his waist sunk into the stone. A body flashed across like a gust of wind. In front of him was only Zhong Shou, who was 100 feet away. He stood alone on the stone platform. Who knows when a grade 5 spirit beast that looked like a broken mountain bear appeared in front of him. This Xuanwu ancestor's eyes were filled with doubt. The legendary Zhong Shou should be a piece of trash who didn't know how to cast spells. However, just now, he personally saw him summon a protector beast, following which he didn't care. So what if he knew how to cast spells? Under his sword, he would still die. Just as this person was staring at Zhong Shou was also looking at him. He was roughly 40 years old with a square face. His aura should be that he was close to breaking through 7 meridians of the Earth Chakra level. His eyes were filled with the joy of being about to succeed, as well as a vicious, killing intent. It was also filled with confidence and calmness. Samurai's eyes squinted, following which he smiled helplessly. A ball of silver light from his sleeves sank down towards his waist. At this moment, there were 2 swords hanging by his waist. One was the lightning wing sword that Duanmu Irin gave him. The other was the broken 9-shilin sword. Pretty much in an instant, Little Gold's body merged with the 9-shilin sword. Behind Zhong Shou, a ball of Yin's soul also rose up. It brought the 9-shilin sword body, which was shining with a bright golden glow, into the air. Within his soul, the illusionary spirit energy sword was also injected into the sword body. The golden light flashed and struck the middle-aged man in front of him in the nick of time. In the next instant, Shi Dan's exclamation could be heard. Daytime, OB. Shi Dan's eyes were filled with shock. With his knight wandering realm soul power, he was actually able to go out of body at night and wasn't burnt by the sun true flame. How did this crown prince manage to do it? Then, another wave of astonishment rose in his chest. This is a grade 7 spiritual artifact. No, it's grade 8. It actually has a second soul, illusionary spirit, sword embryo. The last few words were just what she thought in her heart, and she didn't have time to say it out loud. The scene before her eyes caused her pupils to dilate to the extreme. That Xuanwu ancestor who was close to Zhongsho didn't look at the sword image above. His eyes were sharp as he stared at Zhongsho's neck. Who cares what methods he had? As long as he chopped off this person's head, everything would end. Under the day wandering realm, no matter how strong a spirit master was, without a body, they would only die. However, when the golden sword light attacked him at a speed several times faster than his and at an extremely mysterious angle, he couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. His eyes instantly constricted. Without hesitation, he explosively retreated. In that instant, he only felt that this sword was abnormally fierce and sharp. He was afraid that before he could chop off Zhongsho's head, his body was about to be sliced into pieces. His mind was in a mess all of a sudden. Why was this Zhongsho able to go out of body during the day? Why was his sword technique so exquisite? Where did he get that grade 8 spiritual artifact? The illusionary spirit sword crafting technique was obviously the path of sword cultivators. Which idiot actually said that this person was trash who didn't accomplish anything in both the spirit and martial paths? What a F***king scam. He was crazily retreating into the distance. At that moment, his heart had totally given up on his plan to assassinate Zhongsho. However, in the next breath, he felt that the 9-headed Qilin sword shadow in front of him was a little different. At that moment, Zhongsho's soul was indeed changing. A darkness blooming Sirius was blooming. This caused the soul sea to immediately boil and suddenly expand by close to 20%. The golden sword shadow suddenly flashed and shook as it pierced into the sword light in front of him. It sliced off the head of the middle-aged man with one sword. Heaven swallowing energy conversion. Slash again. The 9 Qilin sword that was flying in the air didn't delay at all, only swallowing a small portion of this person's essence energy to block the sunlight, following which it slashed towards another Xuanwu ancestor at the side. This person crazily dodged right away. The blade in his hand surged with blade energy as he waved it in front of him, but it was of no use at all. The 9 Qilin sword was still easily in front of him. In the end, his eyes were filled with despair as he suddenly hollered, "Retreat! Quickly retreat! This person is a night-wandering sword-driving cultivator. His sword path is one with the spirit. F******** his grandmother." He wasn't able to say that last sentence. That golden sword light had already pierced through his left chest, directly piercing through his heart. It absorbed the thickest essence energy and pierced through. At this moment, the expressions of the other 4 people changed. Without any hesitation, they started to flee. Li Luo laughed coldly, his body unbelievably pulling back his bow, exploding out like a spring. His body flashed, and he sliced off the head of one of them. Tan Tao didn't hesitate, his body pouncing out to tangle with a Xuanwu ancestor that was forced back by Hu Zhongyuan. Zhongsho's sword rose into the air once more. Like a Luan bird, in a tenth of an instant, he was 1,000 feet away. With a twist of the sword body, he sliced off the head of another person. However, when he reached this point, Zhongsho had used up all his strength. In his soul, the blooming Sirius was slowly withering and closing. He wasn't willing to use the other 2 darkness blooming Sirius here. Using his spiritual sense to sense, he knew that there was no need for him to interfere. He didn't hesitate to ride the sword back into his body. As expected, when he opened his eyes once more, Li Luo had already caught up to another person. They were still entangled in the battle, but they had a suppressive advantage. Li Luo's lips were filled with a cruel smile. Tan Tao's opponent was even worse. Under the combined efforts of Shurdan, the 2 spirit beasts, and Tan Tao, He couldn't hold on for more than 10 minutes before his head was sliced off. Hu Zhongyin, who had been watching from the back, opened his mouth wide in disbelief. Chapter 207. Six Xuanwu Zong Shou. It ended just like that? How quick? Looking on as the last person was killed by Li Luo and Shi Dan's few spirit beasts. Only then did Hu Zhongyuan turn around and look at Zong Shou with a shocked expression. Possessing a 10th of Power's Grade 8 spiritual artifact, Second Soul Illusionary Spirit Sword, Sword Path 1, with the spirit, along with that moment when he reached the peak of the night wandering realm for some reason. When all these were combined, he was actually able to insta-kill Xuanwu ancestors. Out of the 6 who attacked, close to half of them died in the hands of Zong Shou. Li Luo and Shi Dan's eyes flashed with a weird expression, like they were getting to know him for the first time as they looked at Zong Shou once more. Only Tan Tao frowned as he looked at the corpses on the ground. Looking at their methods, they seemed to be from the demon path. They also don't seem to have anything to do with Yunxia Mountain and Blazing Flame Mountain. Just as he was about to step over to check those corpses, Zong Shou finally caught his breath. The consumption this time was so intense that he had lost most of his essence energy. Even Little Gold had no energy at this moment. The darkness blooming serious that he used needed a few more months to reach that level. While thinking that he had lost another trump card, Zong Shou shook his head. No need to look, it is most probably Demon Mountain Sect. Demon Mountain Sect? Tan Tao exclaimed. Thinking about it carefully, he didn't pay much attention to it. He nodded his head expressionlessly. So that's the case. Since he could easily insta-kill a Xuanwu ancestor with one sword, then in this world there weren't many people who could do anything to Zong Shou. Those above the Ascended Realm couldn't interfere in Cloud Continent matters. Zong Shou's identity was especially sensitive. As long as he came to Gantian Mountain, even if he was the Demon Mountain sect leader, he didn't need to fear him. Zong Shou nodded his head gratefully towards Li Luo and Shi Dan. These 2 people really put in a lot of effort. The former blocked 2 Xuanwu ancestors of the same grade. When he was in danger, the latter sent his protector spirit beast over to save him. This time, it was all thanks to these 2. Otherwise, even if he had the help of the Darkness Dutchman Sirius and the 9 Qilin sword, he would still die here. As for Tan Tao, he was actually not bad, no matter how much the people of Xian Mountain City didn't like him. However, in the original history, more than half of the soldiers in this city had died because of his predecessor. Zong Shou took a closer look at their belongings and sighed. At this moment, he was extremely rich. The things that these people were carrying were at most grade 1 or 2 spiritual qi, so he didn't take it to heart. It was a pity that the small Qinkuan pouch could not be bought even if one had the money. After waiting for a few days in Fujie City, there was still no sign of it. No one was willing to sell, even when they put up the offer. However, just as he was about to move down the mountain, a voice suddenly rang out. Shi Dan's body flashed and blocked in front of him. Her brows furrowed. The prince's sword path is one with the spirit, and your spells are strong. It is similar to what my sex elder said. However, a battle between armies is totally different from a life and death battle between a few people. Even if you can kill these 3 Xuanwu ancestors, you might not be able to do much on the battlefield. At that time, Li Luo and I might not even be able to protect ourselves, much less your life. That isn't 44 million, but 400,000 elite troops. Your talents are not bad. It would be a waste if you died here. Li Luo's lips curled up in a mocking manner, but he didn't agree or disagree. Zong Shou wasn't surprised. The elder he that this woman mentioned was most probably old Chow Feng of the Sanla Bank. He smiled and said without thinking, I know what to do. When the time comes, if Mr. Shi sees that the situation isn't good, you can leave first. You don't have to worry about me. Shi Dan was startled, waiting for her to react. Zong Shou had already walked past her and headed down. He had to quickly go down the mountain. If not, the essence, energy, and true qi gathered on the 9 Qilin sword would dissipate. Shi Dan couldn't help but frown when she saw the situation. She stared viciously at Li Luo, who didn't say a word. She could only helplessly follow Zhong Shou down the mountain. At this moment, 30 miles away, Lei Dong's eyes didn't even blink as he looked at the stone platform. There were two people beside him. One of them was Zhao Yanran, who was sitting cross-legged expressionlessly. However, her aura was much thicker and more condensed. Surprisingly, he had stably stopped at the martial ancestor realm. On the skin that was exposed outside of his clothes, one could faintly see 5 different colored tattoos swimming under his skin. The other person was lying paralyzed on the ground. His eyes were opened wide, filled with rage and helplessness. If Zhong Shou was here, he would be able to recognize that this person was Xian Yuan Iren's senior brother Fang Shu. This sworn brother is getting more and more amazing. Grade 8 spiritual artifact, darkness blooming Sirius, along with his sword path one with the spirit. In this Donglin cloud continent, there aren't many Xuanwu ancestors who can deal with him. When Zhong Shou and the others disappeared, the stone platform that they had an intense battle on started to collapse. After Lei Dong retracted his gaze, he looked at Zhao Yanran with jealousy, following which he sighed heavily. Recently, I feel that I am mentally and physically exhausted. With my brother's identity and personality, how can I hide it? That uncle of mine is really unreasonable. It's really worrying. Worrying? You asked for it, because you were soft-hearted. Wouldn't it be better to kill this person to silence him? Zhao Yanran coldly glanced at Fang Shu, causing his body to shudder. However, it is a pity for his sword path one with the spirit. If he could take another step and merge spirit and martial arts, there wouldn't be many people in the same generation who could compare to him. When Lei Dong heard that, he scoffed, spirit and martial arts merging. Why did you suddenly think about that? That is easier said than done. Don't be too greedy. Fang Shu rolled his eyes. That Gantia mountain prince had merged spirit and martial arts tens of days ago and used it to defeat Xinyuan Tong. However, these two people didn't seem to know. There were huge armies on Xian Mountain, and Taigang Hall could cut off all spiritual sense. Thinking about it, it wasn't surprising. He instinctively wanted to say it, but just as he opened his mouth, he felt wary and didn't say anything. He decided that even if he was beaten to death, he wouldn't speak. If these two people knew about it, he wouldn't be able to escape. Furthermore, he was being abused like that. Zhao Yanran didn't notice the change in his expression, mocking herself and asking curiously, "So you aren't going to help in this battle? There are 400,000 people, and there are many Xuanwu ancestors. How can he win? He actually dares to charge in. Is this Zhong Shou an idiot? I don't know. I'm in a tough spot." Thinking about this matter, Lei Dong was conflicted. He was an ascended ancestor, and if nothing went wrong, within 2 months he would be able to step into the Grandmaster realm. He had long been noticed by the various sects in Donglin Cloud Continent. It wasn't good for him to make a move in such a situation. Looking at him, he seems really confident. Let's take a look first. Who knows, he might be able to break through. Although he said that, in his heart, he had already eliminated that possibility, thinking that if he had no choice, he could only show himself and save Zhong Shou from the chaos. A short while later, on a narrow mountain path, a group of silver-armored cavalry was silently advancing forwards. The leader was a middle-aged, handsome man, holding a red swift bird in his hand, his brows tightly furrowed. His eyes were filled with worry. What the hell is this crown prince trying to do? Less than 5,000 people, and he dares to charge into Rawhide Straits? Half a day later, when the carriage was 30 miles away from Rawhide Straits, Zhong Shou ordered them to stop and set up camp to rest up. Cloud Xia Army and Blazing Flame Army had already sent scouts to report the news back to the barracks. However, Xiong Kuei and Feng Yu were really experienced and didn't immediately send out their troops. Instead, they calmed down and waited patiently. They only strengthened their defenses and chased a large portion of their troops into their tents to rest. Another 2 groups of close to 10,000 men left the camp. They disappeared into the branching paths of Rawhide Straits. If nothing went wrong, they were going to take a detour to cut off their path of retreat. Zhong Shou didn't care, staying in the carriage and quietly meditating. At this moment, his soul ocean was changing intensely. Tens of true spiritual charms were gathering one by one to form a true spiritual talisman. However, there was always a certain power stopping it. Often when half of it was gathered, it would collapse. Each time it failed, his soul ocean would dry up by a little. This was because this true spiritual talisman that was about to form was in conflict with the laws of heaven and earth. And all of the spirit masters would continuously comprehend the true meaning of the talisman through these repeated failures and finally grasp it. Zhong Shou didn't feel dejected, not knowing how much time had passed as he tried time after time. Each time, he would improve. Just as the soul ocean whirlpool shrank to its limit, there was a loud explosion from above. A golden word talisman formed and hung in the middle of the whirlpool. It wrapped around the other 3 true spiritual talismans. When this true spiritual talisman formed, the dried-up soul ocean started to boil. First, it slowly filled up and then slowly expanded. The diameter expanded by 40% before it finally stopped. Zhong Shou continued to meditate, stabilizing his realm before stopping. His face was filled with joy. Although the battle with the 6 Xuanwu ancestors was easily settled, it still brought out some potential. He originally thought that he would only be able to form the 4 true spiritual talismans 10 days later, but he actually completed it today. At this moment, although the diameter of the soul ocean whirlpool only increased by 40%, his soul power increased by 3 times. This time, it was a huge help to him. After waking up, Zhong Shou picked up the purple spear and jumped off the carriage. The bright yellow energy-gathering pearl on the spear was different from a few days ago. At this moment, it was shining brightly. After killing the 3 Xuanwu ancestors, a large portion of the essence energy was injected into it by Zhong Shou. It caused the energy-gathering pearl to be filled to the maximum. Along with Zhong Shou saying something, a person jumped out from the carriage not far away. It was Zhong Yuan, who had been in secluded meditation. Zhong Shou took a look at him and then nodded his head in satisfaction. He was indeed Xiantian 4 meridians, even half of the way to 5 meridians. Beside him hung a purple pearl. That was the lightning element external pill that Zhong Shou bought at a high price a few days ago. Its grade wasn't high and could only provide 5 spiritual meridians. At this moment, Zhong Yuan had successfully refined the artifact, and its aura had merged with it. However, at this moment, Zhong Yuan's expression shocked everyone. However, it caused everyone to be shocked. It was especially gloomy and lifeless. A few days ago, although he was feeling down, he could still be considered optimistic. However, at this moment, he didn't seem like a person at all. His eyes were ice cold. Like if one got close, they would be frozen by his gaze. Zhong Shou didn't care much about that, roughly estimating. Even with the external pill, it could only cause Zhong Yuan's strength to double by a little to around 350,000 kilograms. Luckily, apart from that, there were also spiritual artifacts and equipment. The effects weren't bad. Smiling slightly, Zhong Shou took out 2 spiritual armor and a purple spear and tossed them all over. Chapter 208. Zhong Yuan took it over and immediately recognized one of the sets of armor. It was the Blood Cloud cavalry armor that he bought that day. As for the other set of armor and spear, the moment he entered his hands, he felt extremely familiar, like they were connected by flesh and blood. Without exception, they were all grade 5 spiritual artifacts. He couldn't help but be startled, his gaze regaining a little of its focus. Zhong Shou shook his head slightly. "Don't look at me. This is what Father left in the Sanlu Bank. They are all lightning element, probably prepared for you." Zhong Yuan's expression changed slightly, a glow flashing his eyes before dimming down. Zhong Shou smiled, picking up the talisman brush and circling the soul word mark near his forehead. He drew a talisman once more. Only when it covered his neck and below did he order Zhong Yuan to wear the 2 sets of armor. The grade 5 spiritual armor was a tight-fitting soft armor that was worn inside. The blood cloud armor was worn outside. He also wore the golden silk gloves that Zhongshou snatched over a month ago. When he put down the visor, he rode on the dragon-horned winged horse that Kongqi's sect gave him, which was already wearing a full set of armor. His entire person along with the horse looked like they were made of steel. His aura was also much colder, making one feel a chill down their spine. On the head of the horse, there was also a talisman formation drawn. Zhong Yuan sat on it, only feeling that their minds were connected, and there was no sense of unfamiliarity or disharmony. Only then did he know that the talisman formation on the head was to make it easier for him to control the dragon steed under his feet. Zhongshou looked at it once more, ordering Zhong Yuan to stab with his spear. He estimated that this fellow's strength should be around 5 million kilograms. Only then did he touch his chin in satisfaction. Oh, it should be about there. Then you will lead the charge. The people around were all shocked when they heard that. Tan Tao's face lost all color, straightening his back and looking over in disbelief. He originally thought that apart from himself, there was no one else who would lead the charge. Even Zhong Yuan turned his head to the side. His gaze once again peeked through the visor in astonishment. I'm not sending you to your death. Among all these people, you're the only one I can control. You are my puppet, so you should know how to cooperate with me. The gazes of the people nearby all calmed down, revealing a look of relief. Zhongshou shook his head. However, whether you can survive or not depends on yourself. If you don't have the will to fight, if you don't have the will to live, then you will still lose this battle. Actually, this is also your chance. Whether it's to escape my control or to seek revenge, it's fine. If you don't work hard, how will you know what the result will be? Zhong Yuan's body obviously stopped moving, his eyes filled with a thoughtful look. However, Tan Tao was still worried. The path of military warfare was different from normal battles. Even if Zhongshou's swordsmanship was connected to the spirit, it was useless in this battle. Fighting one person and 10,000 people were two completely different things. For example, Xin Yuan Tong and Hu Qinxiu. In Donglin Cloud Continent, there were experts who could beat them. However, as long as the two of them went out, there was pretty much no one who would lose. In the past, when Zhong Weiran made his debut, his strength was only at the peak of the martial ancestor realm. However, he relied on 1,000 randomly gathered cavalry to sweep everything in his path. Even if tens of times the number of troops surrounded him, he would still be killed. With this Monster King as an example, it seemed like he had a chance to win even if he fought 1 against 100. However, at that time, Zhong Weiran's opponents were just a bunch of random people gathered from various cities. They couldn't be compared to the elites of Yunxia and Blazing Flame Mountain. Furthermore, there were several Xuanwu ancestors on the other side. Zhongshou didn't bother about the two of them, making some arrangements before stepping onto the carriage. The thousands of cavalry here also silently mounted their war horses. Zhong Yuan didn't say a word, riding the dragon-horned winged horse in front of the cavalry. The entire cavalry force of a few thousand people was filled with a deathly aura. Different from Zhong Yuan, although these Xian Mountain City people had the heart to fight to the death here, they couldn't raise their morale at all. Occasionally, their eyes would turn cold as they looked at Zhongshou's carriage. This young city lord was really messing around. He actually dared to go head-on against 100 times enemy, asking to die. Did he think they were made of mud? They also weren't willing to go against orders. They would just treat it as if they were going to be buried along with this dumb, young city lord, returning Zhong Weiran's kindness of saving their lives. However, even if they were asking to die, they needed to drag 1 or 2 down with them. Hee. The military books mention that the army has no fighting spirit. The general has no fighting spirit. Is this the situation they're talking about? Zhongshou sat beside the window, smiling as he looked outside. Whilst he spoke, he was giving Ruoshui acupuncture. Xinyuan Irin's pill was really useful. Although it wasn't the right thing, it had an immediate effect. At this moment, the poison in Ruoshui's body had been drained by 30% after days of blood changing. Who knows, the moment we enter the battlefield, we might die. That would be bad. Oh, right, Ruoshui. Do you have the Sky Fox bloodline? This question was one that he had always been curious about. That day when Ruoxue showed her monster body, although she was in the shape of Sky Fox, he felt that the situation wasn't right. My mother is a shadow fox, a mixed blood. Ruoxue first looked worriedly at Zhongshou. Seeing that Zhongshou's face didn't change, she heaved a sigh of relief. In the fox race, the most important thing was bloodline. However, for someone like Zhongshou, who was a human mixed blood with a noble bloodline, they could barely accept it. Who knows, in the future, it might bring some benefits to the bloodline of the race. However, the shadow fox was a mixed fox. No wonder your concealment skills are so impressive. Zhongshou kept the last needle and let Ruoxue eat a pill before saying expressionlessly, "On the battlefield, blood surges into the heavens. When the spirit masters cast spells, they would set up spell altars far away from the battlefield. No matter what method you use, within 6 hours, try to make them cast as few spells as possible." At this moment, Ruoxue could go all out for 8 hours. She was a little stronger than him, but there was a limit. Ruoxue didn't speak, directly jumping out of the window. Her body was like a celestial as she flew into the forest, disappearing within. These 4,000 cavalry were indeed the elites of Xian Mountain City. They didn't rush nor slow as they carefully stored up their strength and horsepower. 30 miles of distance, they spent a full 2 hours to rush over. At this moment, it was close to noon, the blazing sun in the sky. The opposite barracks all opened up. Squads of armored soldiers marched out in formation. They stepped out of the camp in an orderly manner. With 5,000 people in a square formation, a full 60 square formations were lined up 10 miles out. There were also 100,000 cavalry. They split into 2 sides, galloping like thunder. The clanging sound of armor plates clashing against each other could be heard endlessly. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers were like one body, their aura like that of a mountain. Looking out, one could only see a black mass of heads. Zhongshou instantly heard the sounds of people sucking in breaths nearby. The elites of Yunxia and Blazing Flame Mountain were really well trained. When they entered the canyon, numerous thunder like horse hooves spread out from behind, making one's heart sink. As long as one wasn't brainless, one would know that their way out had been blocked. Chu Shui was also in despair. However, she looked firmly at Zhongshou. "Young master, although you are dumb, Shui doesn't blame you. Later, Shui will definitely die before you." Zhongshou instantly broke out into a laugh, viciously knocking Shui's head. The Xian Mountain City cavalry troops under him were all experienced in hundreds of battles. Although they knew that they had no chance of survival, they didn't panic. Under Tan Tao's orders, 500 Iron Tiger halberd warriors along with 1,000 cavalry who were on horseback. They lined up the carriages head to tail in an orderly manner, forming a firm formation. The other 3,000 people, including the 1,000 mysterious armor wind dragon cavalry, formed up outside of the carriage formation. Their faces were dark and sunken, facing death calmly. Zhongshou's cloud crossing carriage was at the innermost area. A total of 49 carriages were placed side by side, and there were runes carved on them without any pattern. However, when they were pieced together, it was actually a spell altar. Shurdan was in the middle, Li Luo and Zhongshou were protecting at the side. 8 talisman returned to Sun Realm Spirit Masters had limited soul power. There were only 4,500 people here, and after casting a few spells, their soul power was used up. They needed to sit down and meditate to recover. They were all basic spells, wind speed, swift shadow, armor breaking, etc. However, it made the thousands of people here feel pumped up, their morale rising slightly. Even if they had a little more strength now, it would be really valuable. Li Luo stood on the roof of the carriage, his hands behind his back as he looked out proudly. His eyes swept to the side. Zhongshou, who was playing with a black mirror. He recognized that the black mirror was a demon path artifact that could control people from 100 miles away. His brows furrowed. thinking to himself that where did this Gantian mountain prince get the confidence to use these 3,000 cavalry to go up against 400,000 troops? At this moment, not only was Li Luo curious, tens of miles away, on a temporary high platform made of thick logs, Feng Yu and Xiong Kuei looked over curiously. Is this Zhong Shou dumb or dumb? Did he really just barge in? Even if he is dumb, he wouldn't send himself to death like that. Xiong Kuei suddenly stood up and walked to the side of the wooden platform. This kid bought low and sold high that day, changing hands for tens of times the profit. During these few days, I have been reflecting and have overestimated him. But what exactly is this fellow up to today? Feng Yu frowned. He was totally confused about today's matter. To say that this kid was dumb, that day he definitely wouldn't be able to predict that beast crystals and mind stones were about to fall. To say that this kid was smart, but he did such a thing that was like sending himself to death. Moreover, if this Zhong Shou had an expert guiding him, how would he not know that he couldn't come to this Rohai Straits? Just as he was in deep thought, he saw that the mysterious armor wind dragon cavalry had started to slowly move forwards. From the right, they started to circle to the left wing. Feng Yu's brows furrowed. After laughing coldly, he stood up. I don't know why this Zhong Shou ran over here. However, since the rat is already in the trap, I won't let them run away. Send my orders to Yangxian, the left wing attack. Be efficient and wipe out these people who don't know life from death. A spirit master beside him immediately acknowledged the order. A talisman bird instantly rose into the air and flew towards the left side of the formation. In just a moment, the close to 50,000 iron cavalry on the left wing pulled on the reins and slowly moved forwards. Chapter 209. When the army started to gallop, there was an orderly rumbling of horse hooves. Although the horse hooves were stepping in the air, waves of wind struck the ground. It caused the hundreds of miles of flat land to rumble. Even 10 miles away, Zhong Shou could feel the ground shaking. Charging at the front were the 2,000 tiger leopard cavalry. They were all covered in heavy armor, riding white patterned tooth tigers. They were like a sharp arrowhead, leading the tens of thousands of iron cavalry forwards. Behind them were 10,000 heavy cavalry, men and horses all covered in black rune iron armor. Looking from afar, it was like an iron forest surging over. In Zhong Shou's eyes, he saw much more. It could be seen that these tens of thousands of cavalrymen were gradually condensing a tyrannical aura. Their will, morale, combat strength, and numbers were all condensing into an aura similar to the aura of martial arts. This caused these 50,000 cavalrymen to become even more tyrannical and unstoppable, as if they could trample on everything. In this formation, even a martial master's strength would greatly increase, close to mythic master strength. The entire army was led by a single person at the front of the army, who was constantly controlling and adjusting the formation, causing the tens of thousands of people to be twisted into a single unit. It also led the overall aura of the 50,000 cavalry to climb step by step to the peak. Looking at his side, Zhong Shou was speechless. 3,000 iron cavalry could be said to be majestic. However, in front of the black mass of the army, it was so small and pitiful. Their morale was also low. Fortunately, everyone was prepared to die at this moment. They were willing to sacrifice themselves and die together with the enemy. It was not impossible for them to fight. Zhong Yuan was still at the front, while Tan Tao and Hu Zhongyuan were protecting him from the left and right. At this moment, they urged the mounts under their feet to increase their speed. That's Yang Xian. Legend has it that he's a 6th meridian Xuanwu. Based on what I know, he should have broken through to the 7th meridian and is said to be the 7th expert of Yinxiao Mountain. The commander of the Tiger Leopard Cavalry is best at commanding cavalry. His only loss was 7 years ago to Hu Qinxiu, but he was able to escape unscathed. After which, he clashed with Hu Qinxiu 8 more times, and, in the end, he was able to barely remain undefeated. He was famous in the west of Donglin Cloud Continent and was seen as a famous general. The 10-5 Meridian martial ancestors under him are all top picks. Li Luo explained as he watched. His gaze intentionally swept over Zhong Shou. 2 years ago, this person had 30,000 cavalry, sweeping through the 270,000 alliance army in Tianfeng province, causing the 17 cities to only be able to defend and not leave. The so-called Tianfeng province was located in the southwest corner of Donglin Cloud Continent and was one of the areas under the jurisdiction of the West Ocean Taoyuan city. However, Zhong Shou didn't seem to hear him. He only responded with a soft hum. He quietly fiddled with the black round mirror in front of him. Light gradually appeared in the mirror, and one could faintly see the swarming iron cavalry on the opposite side. When Zhong Yuan's field of vision appeared in the mirror, he was shocked. Zhong Shou suddenly made another hand seal. A faintly discernible black wooden bird suddenly soared into the sky. It didn't stop until it was 10,000 feet high and far away from the blood and vengeful energy. It started to glide in the sky, and its body totally disappeared. This was a spiritual artifact that he bought in Jiafu City. It was grade 4, but it wasn't of much use. It could only travel 1,000 miles and scout the surroundings. The grade 4 spiritual formation within the wooden bird was mostly used to hide and cover aura. This thing is not bad for spying in the future. Anyone below Ascended Grandmaster won't be able to notice it if they don't pay attention. Zhong Shou couldn't help but imagine that erotic scene, until the scenes of the wooden bird looking down from the sky were transmitted into his soul. Only then did his face turn solemn, revealing a serious expression. Next, it was time for him to get serious. In the last life, to perfect his sword techniques on the battlefield, he made up for his weaknesses. In the virtual world of the God Emperor game, he had joined a guild to help a friend. He had also gone through 500 to 600 battles. That era had a huge population along with NPCs. Any 2 small cities could move hundreds of thousands of troops. At the start, he was a newbie who was defeated in one strike. Toward the end, he could barely hold his own. Who knows how many times he lost before the bitterness was over. From losing more than winning, it slowly turned into winning more than losing. Even in the worst environment, he could escape unscathed. However, there was still a huge gap between them and the army gods who dominated a region in the game. However, 10,000 years ago, even when the spiritual wave had just appeared, the military strategies that were developed, compared to the modern era, where the highly simulated virtual environment was extremely developed, the difference was simply too great. In that era, the people in the cloud world basically didn't have to worry about food and clothing. Players who were bored would pretty much kill each other all day in that virtual world with 10 times the time difference. Anyways, even if they died, they could respawn. As a result, many unimaginable military tactics emerged one after another. Especially local tactics, the Battle of the Vanguard, the use of spells on the battlefield were all developed to the extreme. With the little ability that he trained up, he could probably do whatever he wanted in Donglin Cloud Continent. This was also why he dared to use 3,000 cavalry to go head-on against the 400,000 Yunxia and Blazing Flame Alliance army. Virtual and reality were naturally different. However, with such an elite cavalry army in his hands, it wasn't impossible to overcome. Compared to those players who were always in a mess, these Xian Mountain City cavalry were much stronger. When they were close to 10,000 feet, the iron cavalry of both sides started to gallop. Looking down from above, one could see one big and one small, 2 totally disproportionate, sharp arrows clashing head-on. They were all well-trained, controlling the speed of the horses and stepping on a specific rhythm. When the horse hooves landed, it was like a clang. Zhong Yuan was also someone who had gone through hundreds of battles. He had led 10,000 men to charge in Gantian Mountain. At this moment, the muscles in his body were all relaxed. Holding the grade 5 purple lightning spear, his eyes coldly looking forwards. He had no fighting intent nor killing intent, just a nonchalance that didn't concern him. The battle today had nothing to do with him. He was only forced by someone to charge at the tip of the army. However, that crown prince still treated him well. Although Zhong Yuan knew that he was going to die, he wasn't willing to owe that person anything. Going all out through the dragon-horned winged horse under his feet, he controlled the rhythm and speed of the army. When they were close to 1,000 feet, he could clearly see the fine patterns on the cold, iron armor. Zhong Yuan suddenly felt an intent that wasn't strong but couldn't be resisted suddenly pass through the air and control his limbs. Then he jumped off the horse and raised a purple lightning spear in his hand. The dragon-horned winged horse's galloping speed suddenly increased by several times. It brought the 3,000 men behind him to increase their speed. That slow and heavy rumbling suddenly sounded out in a dense manner. The 2,000 tiger leopard cavalry opposite also increased their speed at the same time. Like a sharp awl, they smashed over. Close to 100 feet, Zhong Yuan could even see the cold gazes of the 2 cavalrymen in front of him through their helmets. They were originally 5 Meridian martial ancestors. At this moment, using the strength of the army, their aura rose close to the peak. Their gazes towards him were like looking at a corpse. Zhong Yuan scoffed. These 2 people were dead for sure. That prince's martial path was one with the spirit, so dealing with these 2 wasn't a problem. The 3 horses charged, and in the blink of an eye, they were 30 feet apart. Zhong Yuan suddenly felt a lightning glow explode around his body. The unknown yellow pearl at the tip of the spear injected a strong essence energy into his body, causing the energy in his chakra meridians to be filled to the max. His hands couldn't help but shake. Instantly, hundreds of spear images appeared at the tip of the purple lightning spear. Numerous blue lightning bolts also gathered at one spot. It actually formed an extremely sharp lightning blade that cut forwards at an even faster speed. The 2 5 Meridian martial ancestors who were originally prepared to rip apart Zhong Yuan's body were startled. They were only able to wave their knives, and in the next moment, the spear image was right in front of their eyes. They were directly smashed into pieces by the purple spear tip. The lightning glow exploded out, bringing with it a sharp energy. It caused the flesh and blood to explode and scatter everywhere. It caused the white-patterned toothed tigers behind him to be shocked, instinctively dodging to the side. They gave out intense tiger roars, and their orderly formation was also slightly messed up. Zhong Yuan's spear didn't stop there. The dragon-horned winged horse under him charged 40 feet with one step, directly charging into the group of tiger leopard cavalry. A horse neigh that was similar to a dragon's roar caused those white-patterned toothed tigers to panic. The spear image swept and directly struck the 5 Meridian martial ancestor cavalry, who were still in shock. One spear ending them all in the most gory way. Each spear attack would cause flesh and blood to scatter and scatter everywhere. In just a breath, tens of lives were taken. This spear technique seemed to be his purple lightning spear. How could it be so amazing? Zhong Yuan was at a loss. This pretty much godlike spear technique caused his emotions to surge and his blood to boil. However, a moment later, it slowly turned cold. So what if his spear technique was good? He could kill 1,000, 2,000, or even 10,000 people. However, he couldn't use the strength of one person to fight against 400,000 troops. Just as he was shaking his head, Zhong Yuan suddenly felt that something wasn't right. The dragon-horned winged horse under his feet wasn't galloping straight ahead. Instead, it was adjusting its angle and changing its direction. The direction it charged towards wasn't where the enemy cavalry was weak. It was often at the front where their strength was the strongest and the aura was the strongest. It was always smashed with one spear like a hot knife through butter. It caused the 3,000 cavalry behind him to have their pressure reduced to the minimum. At this moment, there were close to no casualties. This bloody massacre and dismembering of the corpses shocked their hearts. Although the tiger leopard cavalry in front of him had seen killing and blood, they had seen a lot of it. However, when he charged forwards, no one could stop him, no one could stop him. These people couldn't help but feel their hearts shake. In Zhong Yuan's mind, a line of words subconsciously appeared. Forcing the enemy to attack was the sharpness of the blade. Before he could think about it, a person appeared in front of Zhong Shou. The white patterned toothed tiger under him was close to twice as strong as the others, its body majestic. It also held a horse slaying machete in its hand, slashing over with a heavy aura. The aura of tens of thousands of iron cavalry was gathered on its body. The machete light charged forwards. However, before it reached the tip of the blade, a 10,000-foot ditch appeared on the ground below. Vast amounts of energy, tens of millions of kilograms of strength pressed down. It's Yang Xian. Zhong Yuan was astonished. He was extremely clear about how strong this person was. His hands involuntarily waved the spear image, similarly covering over. When the spear image and the machete light clashed, blood instantly spurted out. A head covered by an iron helmet was tossed into the air. The surrounding people instinctively looked up. That head belonged to Yang Xian. In an instant, the 3,000 cavalry behind Zhong Yuan all heaved a sigh of relief. Chapter 2:10. Within the area of 10,000 feet, regardless of friend or foe, almost everyone who could see the head that was tossed high into the air was deathly silent at this moment. Then there was a sudden burst of buzzing noise. The people of the Tiger Leopard Cavalry were so shocked that they lost their voices. They could only look on as Yang Xian's head was tossed up and then down, until Yang Xian's entire body was smashed into pieces by the true qi and lightning glow. They were also unable to believe that the 7 Meridian Xuanwu commander who would win every battle, pretty much never losing, had fallen under the spear of a red armored male who wasn't even at 5 meridians of the Earth Chakra level, behind Zhong Yuan, who Zhong Yuan and Tantao were also looking at this scene. The latter was still okay, but Hu Zhong Yuan held his breath. He had personally seen Yang Xian and his father cross swords a few times. The Tiger Leopard Cavalry of Yunxia Mountain City and the Iron Tiger Halberd Warriors of the Iron Tiger race would have a battle pretty much every year. However, apart from the first time, which was a total loss, the other few times, even if they failed to charge at the formation, they would be able to remain undefeated. However, today, this famous general who could be compared to his father, Hu Qinxiu, had fallen here. Zhong Yuan himself was at a loss. At that time, he thought that he was definitely going to die. Then, he thought about how his body was being controlled by Zhong Shou. Even if he didn't win, he wouldn't lose either. His entire body started to move. The sky full of lightning glow on the purple lightning spear all shrunk into a point. A portion of the lightning entered his body, stimulating all the muscles in his body, causing his strength and speed to explode out once more. All his true qi, all his strength instantly rose to the extreme. The huge essence energy stored within the yellow pearl at the tip of the spear totally exploded out. Lightning quick, just one spear in Yang Xian, who gathered the strength of 50,000 cavalry, was finished off. Speaking of which, this spear was still his purple lightning spear technique. However, be it the profoundness of the spear technique or the choice of timing, it exceeded his by far too much. If he could grasp such a spear technique, what would happen? His emotions were like a wave in his chest, after which his body involuntarily urged the dragon-horned winged horse to continue galloping. With a flick of the spear, the giant white-striped toothed tiger was flung hundreds of feet away. Then, he took a deep breath until his chest was about to explode. Only then did he muster all the strength in his body and roar, "Yang Xian is dead. Today, there are enemies, but I am invincible. Kill." The 3,000 Xian Mountain cavalry behind were all startled. Then, their blood boiled and their fighting spirits surged. Then, he roared, "I'm invincible. Kill." When this howl resounded over 10 miles, these 3,000 people finally completely merged into one. Everyone's force was excited and connected with each other. Outside of the 3,000 knights, There was a layer of blood-red aura that was invisible to the naked eye. Zhong Yuan's blood qi couldn't help but be ignited again. He inexplicably recalled the words that Zhong Shou had said earlier. I'm not asking you, Zhong Yuan, to throw your life away. Among all these people, the only one I can control is you. You should know how to work together with me. However, whether or not you can live depends on yourself. If you have no fighting spirit and no desire to live, then you will still lose this battle. This is your chance, be it to break free from my control or to take revenge. If he didn't work hard, how would he know what the outcome would be? That's right. If he didn't go all out, how would he know whether or not the outcome would change? How would he know that in the future, he wouldn't have a chance to break free from that prince's control? If he had the spear technique of that prince, the martial path connected to the spirit, wouldn't taking revenge be as easy as flipping his hand? And at this moment, wasn't it the best chance to comprehend that prince's martial path? He could clearly sense how the true qi in his body was moving, how the muscles and joints in his body should be coordinated, and also the spear in his hand. Each spear move, each change, the angle of the stab all had deep meaning. If he could comprehend it, it would be enough to benefit him for the rest of his life. With the knot in his heart removed, Zhong Yuan didn't suppress his raging emotions anymore. His fighting spirit surged, his blood boiling. His entire body felt like it was about to explode, unceasingly surging with energy and potential. The true qi in his body gathered along with his thoughts, instantly increasing by several times. Not only did he go all out to observe and comprehend Zhong Shou's spear technique, but he also split a portion of his attention to pay attention to the prince's charging and commanding techniques. Killing Yang Xian caused the aura of the 50,000 Yunxia Mountain Iron Cavalry to dissipate. Zhong Shou's style changed once more. Before this, he was pushing the sharpness of the spear. However, at this moment, he was choosing those elites who could still maintain the formation and fighting spirit to charge forward. That rampaging, close to crazy aura seemed like it was going to smash the 50,000 elite cavalry of Yunxia Mountain into pieces. Zhong Shou's spear technique was originally strong to the extreme. At this moment, with his full cooperation, he was invincible and no one could stop him. Coincidentally, in front of him, 6 martial ancestors above 4 meridians of the Earth Chakra level attacked together. A bright glow exploded out in Zhong Yuan's eyes. The spear in his hand actually disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. When it appeared once more, 6 purple lightning glows exploded out like plum blossoms. It caused a blood glow to appear at the throats of these 6 people as they directly fell off their horses. Looking out, those 2,000 tiger leopard cavalry were close to dispersing into thin air. Those 10,000 black armor cavalry were also smashed into pieces. Zhong Yuan only felt his heart skip a beat, a certain emotion filling his chest. Then he felt joy and anticipation mixed together. With that prince here, maybe today they could really take on an enemy 100 times their number. The moment such a thought rose up, he couldn't suppress it anymore. Zhong Yuan took in a deep breath once more. This time he didn't need Zhong Shou to control him as he crazily hollered, "A bunch of useless chickens and dogs. My Xian Mountain Iron Cavalry will trample 1,000 troops today." The 3,000 mysterious armor cavalry at the back all had respectful gazes as they looked at the vanguard of the army. They didn't know that their temporary commander was being controlled by Zhong Shou. They only knew that after the 2 armies clashed, this purple lightning spear of Gantian Mountain had consecutively challenged 12 martial ancestor experts. He also killed the Tiger Leopard Cavalry Commander, one of the most famous generals in the west of Donglin Cloud Continent, Xuanwu expert Yang Xian, with 1 spear. To follow such a person to sweep through 10,000 troops, to charge and kill generals. Even if they died, they wouldn't regret it. This time, everyone didn't hesitate, hollering out, "My Xian Mountain Iron Cavalry will trample 1,000 troops today." Feng Yu stood on the high platform, calm and unruffled as he looked at the intense battle between the 2 cavalry armies. Before this, he had taken a close look. Although the 3,000 Xian mountain cavalry were elites, they were 1 in 100. As long as Xian Yuantong and Zhu Junho weren't here, anyone in Xian Mountain City wouldn't be the opponent of Yang Xian. At most, they would be on the same level as him. To Yang Xian, controlling 16 times the number of elite cavalry and exterminating these 3,000 people was an extremely easy task. He just needed to wait for a while. Maybe in less than 10 minutes, there would be an outcome. Xiong Kuei's side seemed to think so too. He had a slight smile on his face, but his eyes were like that of a vulture as he focused on the carriage formation several miles away. As long as he dealt with that small cavalry army, that Gantian mountain prince would be in the bag. Before this, not only was he conned by Zhongshou in Jiafu City, but he also humiliated him. If he could capture that person, he wouldn't let him have a good time. And also Zhong Yuan. In the room of that perverted Feng Yu, in the future there would be 2 more drowning machines. Just as he was thinking about that, Xiong Kuei suddenly felt weird. Looking towards the left side of the battlefield, what he didn't expect was that the 50,000 Yunxia Mountain Cavalry's orderly formation was showing signs of chaos. There was also an uproar spreading out from that side. Could it be that it ended so quickly? Feng Yu and Xiong Kuei exchanged glances with one another in shock, their eyes filled with shock. That Yang Xian was famous for being strict with his troops. Even if the enemy was defeated, he wouldn't allow his army formation to have weaknesses. What was going on? In the next instant, an even fiercer uproar finally spread to the people here, causing their hearts to palpitate. Yang Xian is dead. The Tiger Leopard Cavalry has fallen. The 9th unit of the Black Cloud Cavalry has also fallen. It is that red armor general. I heard that the unit general also died in battle. The 60 infantry square formations in front of the high platform were all in an uproar. The generals of the Yunxia and Blazing Flame armies were all experienced and went all out to suppress it. However, they were unable to calm down for a long time. On the stage, Feng Yu's face was ashen as he stared intently at the left side. He gritted his teeth, causing them to creak. His voice came out from the gaps of his teeth. What, Yang Xian is dead? The Tiger Leopard Cavalry has fallen? Commander Yang is a general of our Yunxia Mountain. Who here could do anything to him? The Tiger Leopard Cavalry is invincible. How could they fall? Nonsense. Messing up the heart of our army. They deserve to die. Xiong Kuei frowned. He also thought so in his heart. However, the situation in front of him didn't give him any good thoughts. The cavalry formation of the Yunxia army was becoming more and more chaotic. In the next instance, he saw a talisman crane fly over from that direction. A spirit master at the side took it in his hand. After taking a look, his face turned green and white. He forcefully went up against Feng Yu and Xiong Kuei's gaze, which looked like it was about to swallow him up. It is news from the 5th unit of the Black Cloud Cavalry. Yang Xian is dead, killed by a red armor cavalry with 1 spear. The Tiger Leopard Cavalry is in disarray. 8 out of the 10 captains have died. Out of the 10,000 units of the Black Wind Cavalry, 6 have fallen. Feng Yu could only feel that his chest was stuffy, spitting out a mouthful of blood and nearly fainting. The Tiger Leopard Cavalry was 4,000 strong. Not only was it the most elite cavalry of Yunxia Mountain, but it was also the core fighting strength of their Wind Leopard race that shocked many of the monster races. As for the Black Cloud Cavalry, they were only weaker than the Tiger Leopard Cavalry, a talisman armor-heavy cavalry that they spent 10,000 to build. In today's battle, half of them fell here. However, all of this added up couldn't be compared to the death of Yang Xian and the 8 Tiger Leopard Cavalry captains. It was a huge blow to him in Yunxia Mountain. Who was that red-armored knight? Chapter 211. That dizziness lasted for tens of breaths before slowly calming down. In the next moment, Feng Yu's true qi started to go berserk, pressing down on the platform that was made up of thick logs, causing it to crack. But Feng Yu completely ignored it, staring fixedly in front of him. Since the army is in chaos, then why are we still fighting? Squeeze into a ball and wait to be slaughtered one by one. Pass down the order. Tell those who are able to escape to disperse. Back out 3 miles and regroup. As for the Black Cloud Cavalry and Tiger Leopard Cavalry, it is best if they can escape, but it doesn't matter if they can't. A weird glow flashed in Xiong Kuei's eyes as he looked at Feng Yu with respect. To be able to regain his rationality so quickly. Losing a general didn't cause him to be angry. He even cut off his wrist. How amazing. As expected from the current generation of Yunxiao Mountain. To be able to be compared to him, he was really amazing and couldn't be underestimated. Feng Yu's eyes exploded out with a sharp glow, killing intent as he looked at the place where the killing shouts charged into the clouds. I only want to know who that person is. I'm also curious. Based on what I know, only Xian Yuan Tong and Zhu Junho can use 3,000 to break 50,000. Xiong Kuei's brows were tightly furrowed. However, the few provinces under Xian Mountain City are unstable recently. Especially the north, where Linlan City has been revived. They have 150 cloud ships and a huge army of 600,000. Xian Yuan Tong is said to be in secluded meditation. So how can Zhu Junho leave now? Just as they were speaking, the black mass of cavalry in the distance had already been ordered to disperse, scattering in all directions. The field of vision of the two of them widened, only to see that several miles of land was covered in corpses, blood flowing like a river. More than 10,000 people had already laid on the wasteland forever. The armor on their bodies were either black or white. They were all carefully crafted talisman armor and talisman soldiers. It made Feng Yu's chest feel like numerous needles were stabbing into it. Tens of thousands of feet away, a red-armored person riding a dragon-horned winged horse, holding a purple lightning spear, finally appeared in front of the two of them. Although he was covered in heavy armor, they couldn't see his face clearly. The two of them immediately recognized that the person inside the armor was the person they were extremely familiar with. It's Zhong Yuan. Feng Yu's fists suddenly clenched, the energy around his body exploding out even more. How could it be him? Could it be that the person in front saw wrongly? Xiong Kuei's eyes were filled with disbelief. Last time in Jiefu City, although this Zhong Yuan had broken through to martial ancestor. However, he had yet to fuse with the spirit vein. How could he be so strong? Killing an 8 meridians black tortoise? He seemed to be relying on the power of his external elixir. His purple thunder spear also seemed to be a rank 5 spirit weapon. The armor on his body was also extraordinary. Even then, he definitely can't go up against a Xuanwu ancestor. As if sensing the gazes of the two, the red-armored knight also looked over indifferently. It was cold and emotionless. He simply raised his gun and pointed it at the stage provocatively. Feng Yu's silver teeth were almost completely crushed at this moment. However, he suppressed his anger. Order Mu Ling and Xian Nu to change the formation. After the wings retract and tilt, change into a crescent shape. We need to strengthen the middle and thin the wings. Order the two of them not to easily engage that Zhong Yuan. Command the entire army. I want that Zhong Yuan to die without a burial place. Many orders were swiftly given out. On the left of the high platform, the 150,000 infantry, 30 square formations instantly started to change. The formation started to tilt to the left. They swiftly changed in an orderly manner. 30 square formations, 150,000 elite soldiers lined up with their backs against the high platform. The other infantry formed 15 square formations on each side, spreading out to the two wings. Those cavalry that regrouped didn't attack anymore. They just quietly stayed several miles away, eyeing aggressively. Xiong Kuei slightly nodded his head when he saw that. Cavalry armies relied on charging strength. Once their charge was stopped in front of this crescent formation that was like an iron bastion, then when the two wings closed in, those Yunxiao Mountain iron cavalry would follow right behind them. The 3,000 cavalry of Xian Mountain City would be smashed to pieces. In the next instance, he felt a fierce wolf-like gaze stab into his face. Xiong Kuei turned his head only to see Feng Yu staring viciously at him with a vicious expression. He couldn't help but break out into a laugh. Before knowing the strength of that Zhong Yuan, he wasn't willing to stupidly throw in the capital of his blazing flame mountain. Although he didn't believe it in his heart, Yang Su's death and the fall of 12 martial ancestors was a fact. However, after all, they were allies, and he couldn't reject him. Taking in a deep breath, Xiong Kuei made his decision and said expressionlessly, "I will give you 50,000 infantry. That Mu Jiang will also move to the left wing. Are you satisfied? As for the 50,000 cavalry of my blazing flame mountain." Xiong Kuei paused, smiling as he looked into the distance. Why not capture the leader first? Feng Yu's eyes turned cold once more as he scoffed coldly. Then, he looked forward at the 200,000 elite infantry. He was confident that even if the enemy had 5 times the number of troops, they would be crushed in front of his army. As for that Mu Jiang, although he wasn't a famous general, he was a grade 7 Xuanwu expert and had some use. The Xian Mountain cavalry in the distance weren't in a rush to charge. Instead, they stopped their horses temporarily, either treating their injuries or taking out some pills and soybeans to feed the war beasts under them. Everything was done in an orderly manner. Although they were invincible in the battle, just now, hundreds of people had fallen. The remaining people also consumed a lot of energy. Since they had time to rest, they naturally had a rest. They were calm and unruffled until their stamina and internal energy recovered. Once again, they urged the war horses to gallop forward. This time he used the fish scale formation to strike at the thickest part of the crescent moon formation, where the strength was also the strongest. The vanguard of the army was Zhong Yuan. At this moment, 10 miles away, on the roof of the carriage, Li Luo was squinting his eyes as he looked at the hundreds of thousands of Yunxiao mountain troops. At the front of the formation was a group of soldiers who were fully dressed in black armor and holding 5-foot spears. Even from several miles away, looking out, it still suppressed one's heart. Long spears were densely packed like a forest, pointing forward diagonally. Tall square shields were inserted into the ground, like steel walls, flashing with cold light. Hundreds of thousands of people, the formation stretched for several miles, more and more shocking. Yunxia City is famous for their cavalry. Tiger Leopard Cavalry, Fire Wolf Cavalry, Shanbird Cavalry, they can all sweep an area. However, their infantry is not bad. These 4,000 Black Cloud Dragon Spear warriors might not be comparable to your Iron Tiger Halberd warriors and Blazing Flame Mountain Maniac Bear armored warriors, but they are ranked in the top 40 of the Cloud Continent. There is also Mu Ling and Xianu. Although they are grade 7 Xuanwu, I heard that their martial path talents exceed that of Yang Xian. As Li Luo spoke till here, he once again looked towards the front. Not far away, an enormous group of knights were currently charging towards this place like a swarm of bees, causing dust and smoke to fill the sky. Looking at it, in just tens of breaths, they could reach the front of the carriage formation. A full 50,000 cavalry, causing the earth to shake, causing the air to shake. The corner of Li Luo's lips curled up. The true trouble had arrived at this moment. Who knows how this prince was prepared to deal with it? In the next moment, Zhong Shou smiled. One-hand gesture. Those Iron Tiger Halberd warriors didn't stupidly line up behind the carriage formation. Instead, they all started to move, opening the black curtains of the carriages and drilling in. Then, they opened the outer carriages. What was revealed was a series of 3-armed giant crossbows that had already been strung. Pretty much at the same time, close to 150 crossbows with talismans carved on them shot out. In the blink of an eye, they were 5,000 steps away and instantly exploded. In that instance, in front of Li Luo's eyes, it was like a giant fire cloud had exploded. The rumbling actually made his eardrums feel really uncomfortable. Those Iron Tiger Halberd warriors and Xian Mountain City warriors were unable to take it. Their eyes were filled with pain, blood seeping out from their ears. Some of the people with lower cultivations were directly flipped over by the strong wind that blew over. When the flames dissipated, Another small-scale mushroom cloud rose into the air, rising to a height of over 300 meters. At this moment, everyone, including those Iron Tiger Great Halberd warriors who shot out the arrows on Zhongsho's orders, looked forward in shock. This is Kongqi Sek's 3-arm spiritual crossbows. There are also wind flame exploding arrows. Right away, Li Luo recognized the origin of the giant crossbows and the arrows. He couldn't help but open his eyes. At this moment, the carriage formation was only shooting from one side. Along with the other side, weren't there close to 303-arm spiritual crossbows? Just the total price was close to 20 grade 7 beast crystals. As for the wind flame exploding arrows, they were grade 4 and shockingly expensive. Even if it was a one-time consumable item, it was 10% of the price of the 3-arm spiritual crossbows. 150 of them were 2 grade 7 beast crystals. After that, it was a full 20,000 grade 4 beast crystals. No, at this moment, the price of beast crystals had plummeted. Even if one spent hundreds of grade 7 beast crystals, one might not be able to buy such an army weapon. This Zhongsho was so rich to such an extent. No wonder he was so confident. He actually had such a trump card. The 3-arm spiritual crossbows and wind flame exploding arrows were originally designed by Kongqi Sect to go against ascended ancestors. However, Zhongsho used it here. How vicious. He had been too careless these few days. He had been quietly cultivating and didn't think that there were so many killing weapons hidden within the few hundred carriages. When the dust and smoke from the explosion dissipated once more, only to see that at the center of the explosion there was a 10,000 feet wide hole. There were corpses all around. A full 6,000 people had totally disappeared, blown into pieces of flesh and blood. The surrounding area was also filled with dead and injured people. Half of the people were either lightly or heavily injured, collapsing to the ground. Half of the grade 2 Wind Rider foals died from the shock. Since they were still alive, they couldn't run anymore. Zhongsho felt that it was a pity. At this moment, he had no more men to use and was unable to fight back. If not, just a 3,000 cavalry would be able to slaughter half of these people. That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.